Chapter 1. The smell of blood hit Evangeline Whitmore's nose the moment she stepped into the Hotel Granger's kitchen at 5 a.m. Not human blood, she'd learned to distinguish years ago. This was the metallic tang of raw beef, probably the Wagyu shipment for tonight's supernatural elite gathering. Still, her wolf senses prickled with unease as she tied her apron and began prep work in the pre-dawn darkness. 23 and already head sous chef. Not bad for an orphan nobody who'd clawed her way up from dishwasher. Of course, the hotel's management had no idea what she really was. To them, Evangeline was just another human with exceptional knife skills and an uncanny ability to create dishes that satisfied even the most discerning palates. They didn't know she could smell their secrets. Early again, Evie? Adrian, the night security guard, poked his head through the service door. Human, but kind. One of the few who treated her like more than kitchen help. Couldn't sleep. She pulled out her knife roll, fingers automatically finding her favorite 8-inch chef's blade. Big event tonight. Those rich folks sure do love their fancy dinners. Adrian shook his head. Heard this one's got some real VIPs coming. If only he knew. Tonight's gathering wasn't just rich folks, it was a summit between 3 supernatural factions. Vampires, shifters, and fae, all pretending to play nice while she cooked for them. The irony wasn't lost on her that they'd hired a wolf to feed them. Speaking of which, I better get started. Evangeline reached for her phone, checking the time. Oliver would be getting up for school soon. Her 13-year-old brother was the only family she had left, and keeping him healthy was the only thing that mattered. The latest round of medical bills sat heavy in her mind. Dr. Morrison had been clear, Oliver's autoimmune disease was progressing faster than expected. Without the experimental surgery, her little brother had maybe 6 months. Cost, $200,000. Her current savings, $12,847. The math was brutal, but Evangeline had never backed down from a fight. She'd figure it out. She always did. The kitchen began filling with the morning crew, their chatter washing over her as she lost herself in the familiar rhythm of chopping, seasoning, tasting. Cooking was the one place where she felt completely in control. Her wolf side enhanced every sense. She could detect the exact moment when garlic turned golden, smell when meat reached perfect temperature, know instinctively which flavors would harmonize. Whitmore. Chef Lawrence's voice boomed across the kitchen. Table 7 special request came in. Evangeline looked up from her mise en place. What kind of special request? Raw. Very raw. And they want you to prepare it personally. A chill ran down her spine. In the supernatural world, that usually meant one thing. She glanced at the order ticket Laurent handed her, noting the table number. The vampire section. They asked for me specifically? By name. Lauren's expression was puzzled. Said they heard you had particular talents. Evangeline's stomach dropped. She'd been so careful to stay invisible, to blend in with the human staff. Her wolf nature was her secret, one that kept both her and Oliver safe. If the supernatural elite discovered what she was. Problem? Laurent was watching her carefully. No problem. She forced her voice steady. Just surprised they've heard of me. She took the order and headed toward the walk-in cooler, mind racing. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe they just wanted the best chef available for their special cut of meat. But deep down, she knew better. In her world, there were no coincidences. Inside the cooler, she selected the finest piece of beef tenderloin, its deep red color almost black in the fluorescent light. Her enhanced senses picked up something else, a scent marker that made her wolf stir uneasily. Territory. Someone was marking their presence, sending a message. But to whom? As she returned to her station, Evangeline caught sight of herself in the polished steel surface of the prep counter. Dark hair pulled back, hazel eyes focused and determined. She looked human enough. Normal enough. But normal girls didn't have to worry about supernatural politics. Normal girls didn't spend their nights researching experimental medical procedures they couldn't afford. Normal girls didn't carry the weight of keeping their younger brother alive while hiding their true nature from a world that would destroy them both. The raw meat felt cold against her palms as she began preparing it with surgical precision. Whatever game was being played tonight, she'd have to navigate it carefully. She had too much to lose. Oliver was counting on her. And Evangeline Whitmore never let her family down. Even if she was the only family left. Chapter 2. You're nothing but a packless stray. Theodore Ashworth's words hit Evangeline like a physical blow, even 2 years later. She gripped the steering wheel tighter as she drove to pick up Oliver from school, the memory crashing over her without warning. It always happened like this. Some small trigger would drag her back to that night. Today it was the scent of expensive cologne from one of the hotel guests, the same brand Theodore used to wear. 2 years ago. She'd been 21 and stupid enough to believe in love. Theodore had been everything she'd dreamed of, tall, powerful, with the kind of confident smile that made her forget she was just a kitchen worker. Beta of the Ashworth pack, son of one of the most influential werewolf families in the city. When he'd started showing up at the hotel, asking for her specifically to cater private events, she'd thought it was about her cooking. She'd been wrong. "You're beautiful when you concentrate," he'd whispered that first night, watching her plate desserts for his family's anniversary dinner. Like watching an artist work. 3 months. That's how long their secret relationship had lasted. 3 months of stolen kisses in supply closets, late-night phone calls, and Theodore promising her a future she'd never dared imagine. "I want you to meet my parents," he'd said one evening, his hands gentle on her face. Officially. She should have known better. Should have remembered that fairy tales didn't happen to orphaned wolves with sick brothers and empty bank accounts. The Ashworth estate had been intimidating, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, old money and older traditions. Theodore's mother, Elena, had looked at Evangeline like something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "So you're the girl Theodore's been spending time with?" Elena's voice had dripped disdain. "The chef. Evangeline has extraordinary talents," Theodore had said, his hand warm on her back. "She's packless." His father, Adrian Ashworth, hadn't even looked up from his brandy. No lineage. No status. No family worth mentioning. "I have family," Evangeline had said quietly. "My brother. The sick human boy." Elena's laugh had been cruel. "Yes, we know about your situation." The temperature in the room had dropped. Theodore's hand had stilled on her back. "He's not human," Evangeline had whispered. "Oliver's a wolf, just like you." Adrian had finally looked at her then, his eyes cold amber. A rogue wolf with a defective pup and delusions of grandeur? Theodore hadn't defended her. Hadn't said a word. That's when she should have left. Should have walked out with her dignity intact. Instead, she'd stood there like a fool, waiting for the man she loved to choose her. "Theodore." Elena's voice had been silk over steel. "Perhaps you'd like to explain to Miss Whitmore why this association needs to end." The silence had stretched until Evangeline felt like screaming. "I'm sorry, Evie." Theodore's voice had been barely audible. "I hoped things could be different. But they're right. Your brother is a burden. The medical bills, the constant worry, I can't take that on. The pack can't take that on." The words had shattered something inside her chest. A burden? She'd turned to face him, seeing the boy she'd fallen for disappearing before her eyes. "Oliver is 13 years old and fighting for his life. He's not a burden. He's my family. And that's the problem." Theodore had looked away. "I need a mate who can strengthen the pack, not one who comes with complications." Evangeline had laughed then, sharp and bitter. "Complications? Is that what you call loving someone?" She'd walked out without another word, her heart breaking with every step. Present day. The school parking lot came into focus as Evangeline shook off the memory. Oliver was waiting by the entrance, his backpack slung over one thin shoulder. At 13, he was small for his age, the disease stealing his strength even as he fought to stay normal. But his smile when he saw her was pure sunshine. "How was work?" he asked, climbing into the passenger seat. "Same as always." She ruffled his dark hair. "How was school?" "Mrs. Timothy says I'm the best in her science class." Pride radiated from him. "She thinks I could get a scholarship to MIT someday. If he lived that long." The thought hit her like a punch to the gut, but she kept her expression light. "Of course you could. You're brilliant. Evie." Oliver's voice was softer now. "You look sad. Are you thinking about him again?" She should have known he'd notice. Oliver saw everything, understood more than any 13-year-old should have to. "I'm fine, little wolf." "Theodore was an idiot," Oliver said matter-of-factly. "Anyone who thinks I'm a burden isn't worth your time." Evangeline's throat tightened. Her brother had never said much about overhearing that conversation 2 years ago, but clearly it had stuck with him. "You're not a burden, Oliver. You're the best thing in my life." "I know." He grinned at her. That's why Theodore was an idiot. Driving home, Evangeline made the same promise she'd made that night at the Ashworth estate. She'd never again let anyone make her feel small. Never again trust her heart to someone who couldn't see her worth. Oliver was her family. Her pack of 2. And she'd move heaven and earth to keep him safe. Chapter 3. Sebastian Blackthorne walked into the hotel grandeur like he owned it, which, technically, he did. The lobby fell silent as supernatural elite turned to stare at the man who'd been a ghost for 5 years. Sebastian ignored them all, his ice blue eyes focused straight ahead as he strode toward the private elevator that led to the penthouse. He was tired of being hunted. "Sebastian." Victoria Ashworth materialized beside him, her perfect smile predatory. "What a wonderful surprise. We had no idea you were back in Thornwick." "Victoria." He didn't slow his pace. "You simply must join us for dinner tonight. The Silverstone Pack is hosting, and I know Isabel would love to see you again." Victoria's hand touched his arm, lingering just long enough to annoy him. "She's grown into such a beautiful woman." Sebastian stopped walking. Around them, conversations had resumed, but he could feel dozens of eyes watching his every move. Waiting to see which eligible daughter would finally snare the Ravenshollow Alpha. "I'm sure she has." His voice was arctic cold. "But I'm not interested." Victoria's smile faltered. "Sebastian, you're 27. The pack needs an alpha who focuses on business, not social arrangements." He stepped into the elevator, effectively ending the conversation. "Good evening, Victoria." The doors closed on her shocked expression. 5 years. 5 years of building his empire in London, Tokyo, New York, anywhere but here. 5 years of freedom from the suffocating expectations of supernatural high society. But the Ravenshollow Pack was the largest on the eastern seaboard, and eventually, responsibility had called him home. The penthouse was exactly as he'd left it, minimalist, expensive, and completely impersonal. Like everything else in his life. Sebastian poured himself a scotch and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere down there, pack families were probably already making plans. Dinner invitations, charity galas, hunting parties, any excuse to parade their daughters in front of him. They didn't understand that he wasn't looking for a mate. Had never been looking for one. Love was a luxury he'd never been able to afford. His phone buzzed. Adrian Ashworth, of course. The beta wasted no time. "Welcome home, Alpha. We need to talk." "Tomorrow, Adrian. I just got in. The council is breathing down our necks about the succession. I need a shower and 12 hours of sleep." Sebastian ended the call and immediately switched the phone to silent. He'd been 10 when his parents died in a car accident. 10 years old and suddenly alpha of the most powerful pack in 3 states. The council had appointed regents, cold men in expensive suits who taught him that emotions were weaknesses and attachments were liabilities. They'd done their job well. Sebastian had grown into exactly what they'd shaped, a ruthless businessman with ice water in his veins and no interest in letting anyone close enough to hurt him. Alpha bloodlines must be preserved, old Richard Sterling had told him countless times. Your duty is to the pack, not to foolish romantic notions. Sebastian had learned early that duty and love were mutually exclusive. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. Room service, he'd forgotten he'd ordered dinner. Come in. But it wasn't the usual server who entered. A young woman in chef's whites wheeled in a cart, her dark hair pulled back and her attention focused on her work. She moved with quiet efficiency, setting up his meal without the fawning deference he was used to. Your dinner, Mr. Blackthorne. Her voice was professional, nothing more. Something about her scent caught his attention. Wolf, but not from any pack he recognized. Interesting. Thank you. He watched her work, noting the precise way she arranged everything. You're new. Not exactly. I work in the kitchens. She glanced up briefly, hazel eyes meeting his for just a moment before looking away. They sent me up because your order was specific. Raw meat, prepared exactly the way an alpha preferred it. Most of the human staff couldn't handle requests like that without questions or disgust. And you can handle it? I can handle whatever the job requires. There was steel in her quiet voice. Sebastian found himself studying her more carefully. She wasn't trying to impress him, wasn't angling for his attention or throwing herself at his feet like every other unmated female in the city. She was just working. It was refreshingly honest. What's your name? Evangeline Whitmore. She finished setting up and stepped back. Is there anything else you need? No. The word came out harsher than he'd intended. That will be all. She nodded and headed for the door, then paused. Mr. Blackthorne? Welcome home. And then she was gone, leaving Sebastian staring at the closed door. Evangeline Whitmore. The name meant nothing to him, but something about her lingered. Maybe it was the lack of expectation in her eyes, or the way she'd treated him like any other guest instead of the most eligible alpha in the city. Or maybe he was just tired of being hunted by women who saw him as a prize to be won rather than a person to be known. Sebastian shook his head and turned back to his meal. He had bigger problems than mysterious kitchen staff. Tomorrow, the real hunt would begin, and this time, he was the prey. Chapter 4. The full moon called to Evangeline like a siren song she couldn't ignore. She slipped out of her apartment at midnight, leaving Oliver safely asleep with his inhaler on the nightstand and the door triple-locked behind her. The hospital bills spread across her kitchen table haunted her thoughts, another reminder that time was running out. But tonight, she needed to run. The forest preserve on the city's edge was deserted at this hour. Evangeline parked her beat-up Honda in the shadows and walked deep into the woods, following a path only she knew. When she was certain she was alone, she let the change take her. Bones shifted, muscles elongated, and suddenly she was free. Her wolf was smaller than most, silver-gray with white markings that caught the moonlight. She'd always been slight, even in wolf form, but what she lacked in size she made up for in speed. Tonight she needed that speed, needed to outrun the crushing weight of responsibility that threatened to drown her. She ran until her lungs burned and her paws ached, following deer trails deeper into the wilderness. The night air filled her with sense of pine, earth, and freedom. For these precious hours, she wasn't Evangeline the struggling chef or Evangeline the desperate sister. She was just wild. That's when she caught the other scent. Male. Wolf. Alpha. Evangeline froze mid-stride, every instinct screaming danger. There shouldn't be any other wolves this deep in neutral territory. She was always careful to avoid pack lands, to keep her presence hidden. A shadow moved between the trees ahead. The wolf that emerged was magnificent, easily twice her size, with fur so black it seemed to absorb the moonlight. His ice-blue eyes locked onto hers, and Evangeline's world tilted. She should run. Should shift back and get as far away as possible. Alpha wolves were territorial, dangerous, especially to lone wolves with no pack protection. Instead, she found herself stepping forward. The black wolf mirrored her movement, his massive head tilted in curiosity rather than aggression. There was something familiar about him, something that made her wolf hum with recognition. They circled each other slowly, a careful dance of assessment. He was breathtaking, pure power contained in graceful motion. Everything about him screamed dominance, from the way he carried himself to the authority in his gaze. But he wasn't attacking. Wasn't driving her away. Instead, he seemed as captivated as she was. When he lowered his great head in what could only be described as a bow, Evangeline's heart stuttered. In wolf culture, that gesture from an alpha to an unknown wolf was unprecedented. She responded instinctively, her own head dipping in acknowledgement. Then they began to move together. It wasn't hunting or fighting, it was something else entirely. A dance as old as wolves themselves, circling and weaving through the moonlit forest with perfect synchronization. Every step he took, she matched. Every pause, every turn, they moved as if connected by invisible threads. Evangeline had never experienced anything like it. This wasn't the clumsy flirtation she'd known with Theodore. This was deeper, primal, a connection that spoke to something essential in her wolf's soul. They ran side by side through the trees, leaping fallen logs and splashing through a shallow creek. The black wolf was careful never to outdistance her shorter legs, and she found herself pushing harder than she ever had to keep pace with his power. When they finally stopped in a moonlit clearing, both breathing hard, the alpha wolf did something that shocked her completely. He shifted. For a moment, Evangeline saw him in human form, tall, dark-haired, with those same ice-blue eyes that had captivated her wolf. Beautiful and dangerous and utterly forbidden. Then he was wolf again, as if he'd wanted her to know who he was beneath the fur. Evangeline's heart raced for entirely different reasons now. She'd seen enough glimpses of the city's supernatural elite to recognize wealth and power when she saw it. This wolf was someone important, someone completely out of her league. Someone who could destroy her carefully hidden life with a single word. But as he approached her slowly, his massive head lowered in another of those impossible bows, all her fears seemed secondary to the pull she felt toward him. He brushed against her side, a gentle touch that sent electricity through her entire body. His scent wrapped around her, pine and winter air and something uniquely him that made her want to follow him anywhere. For a heartbeat, they stood pressed together under the full moon, and Evangeline felt complete in a way she'd never experienced. Like she'd been missing a piece of herself and finally found it. Then reality crashed back. She was a packless wolf with a dying brother and secrets that could get them both killed. He was clearly alpha stock, probably mated or promised to someone worthy of his status. This was impossible. Evangeline stepped back, breaking the connection with effort that felt like tearing away part of her soul. The black wolf's eyes held such longing it nearly broke her resolve. But she had to be smart. Had to protect Oliver. She turned and ran, shifting back to human form the moment she was out of sight. Her hands shook as she dressed, the memory of that perfect moment already feeling like a dream. Behind her, a wolf's howl echoed through the forest, lonely and beautiful and full of the same aching she felt in her chest. Evangeline pressed her palm against her heart and made herself keep walking. Some dreams were too dangerous to chase. Chapter 5. The knife trembled in Evangeline's hand for exactly 3 seconds before she forced herself to focus. 500,000 pounds. The winner's prize for the International Culinary Championship would change everything. Oliver's surgery, their future, freedom from the crushing debt that kept her awake at night, it was all within reach. If she could cook the meal of her life. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most prestigious culinary competition in the supernatural world. The announcer's voice boomed across the Hotel Granger's transformed ballroom. Tonight, 12 chefs will compete for the ultimate prize. Evangeline surveyed her station, pristine knives, premium ingredients, and a clock that would soon become her enemy. Around her, 11 other chefs made final preparations, most of them famous names from acclaimed restaurants. She was the only unknown, the only one who'd clawed her way here through sheer desperation and talent. The guest of honor tonight is Alpha Sebastian Blackthorne, heir to Ravenshollow Industries and tonight's primary judge. Her blood turned to ice. Sebastian Blackthorne stepped onto the judge's platform, devastating in a charcoal suit that made his ice blue eyes even more striking. Those same eyes that had stared into hers 3 nights ago in the forest, when she'd been foolish enough to dance with a wolf she couldn't have. Evangeline ducked her head, hoping the chef's hat would hide her face. Of all the supernatural elite who could have judged this competition, it had to be him. Our chefs will have 3 hours to create a 7-course tasting menu that showcases their unique culinary perspective, the announcer continued. The winner will receive £500,000 and the title of Supernatural Culinary Champion. £500,000. Enough for Oliver's surgery and more. Enough to disappear somewhere safe where pack politics couldn't touch them. Evangeline closed her eyes and thought of her brother's face this morning, pale and determined as he'd gotten ready for another day of treatments. "Bring home the gold, Evie," he'd whispered. "I believe in you." She wouldn't let him down. "Chefs, you may begin." Evangeline moved like lightning, muscle memory taking over as she began prep work for her menu. Pan-seared duck breast with blackberry gastrique, house-made pasta with truffle oil, deconstructed beef Wellington, dishes that would showcase her technical skills while telling the story of her journey. She was deep in the rhythm of cooking when that familiar scent hit her. Pine and winter air and something uniquely male that made her wolf stir with recognition. Sebastian Blackthorne was making his rounds, tasting and observing each chef's work. Evangeline kept her head down as his footsteps approached her station, but she could feel his presence like electricity in the air. "Interesting technique," his deep voice rumbled behind her as she worked on her sauce reduction. "Thank you." She didn't turn around, didn't dare look at him directly. But then the wind shifted, carrying her scent toward him. Sebastian went completely still. Evangeline's hands never stopped moving, but every nerve in her body went on high alert. She could feel the exact moment recognition hit him, the sharp intake of breath, the way his entire body went rigid. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, the alpha who danced with her under the moonlight had recognized her scent. Her wolf wanted to turn, to see if those ice blue eyes held the same wonder she'd felt in the forest. Instead, she kept cooking. "Your name?" Sebastian's voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the underlying tension. "Evangeline Whitmore." She plated her first course with steady hands that betrayed nothing of the chaos in her heart. "Evangeline." He said it like he was tasting something precious. "The white wolf." Her knife slipped, barely missing her finger. Around them, the competition continued, other chefs too focused on their own work to notice the quiet drama playing out at her station. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered. "Don't you?" Sebastian moved closer, his voice dropping to a rumble only she could hear. 3 nights ago. The forest preserve. You ran with me under the full moon." Evangeline's heart hammered against her ribs. "You're mistaken." "Am I?" His hand brushed hers as he reached for the spoon to taste her sauce, and the contact sent fire racing up her arm. "Because right now, my wolf is telling me I've found something I've been searching for my entire life." The words hung in the air between them, dangerous and beautiful and impossible. "I need to focus," Evangeline managed. "This competition means everything to you." Sebastian stepped back, giving her space to breathe. "I can see it in the way you move. Desperation and determination. You're not cooking for glory. My brother needs surgery." The words slipped out before she could stop them. £500,000 will save his life. Something shifted in Sebastian's expression, the alpha's mask slipping to reveal something raw and almost vulnerable. "Then cook," he said quietly. "Show me what you can do when everything depends on it." Their eyes met for one electric moment before Sebastian moved on to the next station, leaving Evangeline shaking and more determined than ever. She had 2 hours left and 6 courses to go. And now she was cooking for more than just Oliver's life. She was cooking for the chance at something she'd never dared dream of. Chapter 6. Evangeline's hands moved like magic, each plate a masterpiece that drew gasps from the judges. With 30 minutes left on the clock, she was ahead of every other chef in the competition. Her duck breast was perfectly pink, her pasta sang with truffle notes, and her deconstructed Wellington had earned a rare smile from the notoriously harsh French judge. Sebastian hadn't returned to her station, but she could feel his eyes on her from across the room. Every time she glanced up, he was watching with an intensity that made her wolf purr and her heart race. "Magnificent work, Chef Whitmore," whispered Claudia Singh, the celebrity chef at the station beside her. "If you keep this up, the prize is yours. £500,000. Oliver's surgery. Their freedom." Evangeline began plating her final course, a chocolate soufflé with salted caramel that had taken her months to perfect, when her phone buzzed against her hip. She ignored it. Nothing could be more important than these last 20 minutes. It buzzed again. Then again. A chill ran down her spine. Oliver knew she was competing tonight. He would never call unless. Her phone rang. "Miss Whitmore?" A voice she didn't recognize, professional and urgent. "This is Dr. Martinez at General Hospital. You're listed as emergency contact for Oliver Whitmore." The whisk fell from Evangeline's hand, clattering to the floor. "He's been brought in by ambulance. His condition is critical. You need to come immediately." The kitchen spun around her. Through the roar in her ears, she could hear the announcer calling for 15 minutes remaining, could see other chefs putting finishing touches on their final dishes. "I'm coming," she whispered into the phone. Evangeline looked at her nearly complete soufflé, at the prize that was within her grasp, at the future she'd been so close to securing. Then she untied her apron. "Chef Whitmore?" The head judge approached her station, confusion written across his face. "Where are you going?" "You have 15 minutes left." "I forfeit." The words came out steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Family emergency." "But you're winning." Claudia stared at her in shock. "This is £500,000. Evangeline was already moving toward the exit, her chef's whites abandoned on the floor. Some things matter more than money. She felt Sebastian's eyes follow her as she ran, but she couldn't think about him now. Couldn't think about anything except getting to Oliver. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Evangeline burst through the emergency room doors still wearing her competition number, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Oliver Whitmore," she gasped to the nurse at the desk. He was brought in. "Room 314. 3rd floor." Evangeline took the stairs 3 at a time, her wolf's enhanced speed carrying her faster than any elevator. She found Oliver's room and stopped dead in the doorway. Her baby brother looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, machines beeping around him like a mechanical heartbeat. His face was gray pale, and there were tubes in his nose helping him breathe. "Evie?" Oliver's voice was barely a whisper, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "You came." "Of course I came." She was beside his bed in an instant, taking his thin hand in both of hers. "I'll always come." "But the competition." Oliver tried to sit up and immediately fell back against the pillows. "You were winning. I saw it on the live stream before." "Shoo." Evangeline smoothed his dark hair back from his forehead. "Competitions don't matter. You matter." Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes. "Miss Whitmore? Could I speak with you privately?" In the hallway, the doctor's words hit like physical blows. "His immune system is failing faster than we anticipated. Without the surgery within the next 2 weeks." She trailed off, but Evangeline understood. "How much?" Evangeline's voice was raw. "For the emergency treatment to keep him stable?" 50,000, minimum. And that's just to buy time. £50,000 she didn't have. The competition prize that was probably being awarded to someone else right now, while she stood in a hospital corridor watching her world crumble. "I'll find the money," Evangeline said. She had to. Oliver was all she had left in the world. Walking back to his room, Evangeline felt the weight of her sacrifice settle on her shoulders. She'd given up everything for these few more days with her brother, and she'd do it again without hesitation. But as she sat beside Oliver's bed, holding his hand while he slept, she couldn't help but wonder if she'd just thrown away their only real chance at survival. The prize was gone. Her savings were gone. And time was running out. Chapter 7. "Miss Whitmore, there's been a mistake with your brother's account." Evangeline looked up from Oliver's bedside, where she'd been holding vigil for 3 days. The hospital billing coordinator stood in the doorway with a confused expression and a tablet in her hands. What kind of mistake? Evangeline's stomach dropped. She'd already explained that she needed time to arrange payment, had begged for just a few more days to figure something out. "Well, that's just it." The woman stepped into the room, her voice hushed. "Oliver's surgery has been paid for. In full. The entire £200,000. The world tilted sideways. "That's impossible." Evangeline stood on unsteady legs. "I didn't, there must be some error." "No error. The payment came through an hour ago. Anonymous donor, bank transfer from Switzerland." The coordinator showed her the tablet screen. "Everything's been covered, the surgery, the follow-up care, even his medications for the next year." Evangeline stared at the numbers until they blurred. £200,000. More money than she'd ever seen in her life, appearing like magic exactly when they needed it most. "Who?" she whispered. "Who would do this?" The donor insisted on complete anonymity. No name, no contact information. Just instructions that Oliver Whitmore was to receive the best possible care. Oliver stirred in his bed, his eyes fluttering open. "Evie? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Someone." Evangeline sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. "Someone paid for your surgery, little wolf." "All of it?" Oliver's eyes widened. "What do you mean someone paid for it?" "An anonymous donor." "The whole amount?" Tears she'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. "You're going to be okay, Oliver. You're going to get better." Her brother reached for her hand, his grip stronger than it had been in weeks. "But who would do that for us? We don't know anyone with that kind of money." Evangeline shook her head, mind racing through possibilities. Her parents had been orphans too, no wealthy relatives hiding in the shadows. She'd never mentioned Oliver's condition to anyone except. The memory hit her like lightning. "My brother needs surgery. £500,000 will save his life." Sebastian Blackthorne, standing at her competition station with those ice blue eyes full of something she'd been too afraid to name. No. It couldn't be him. She was a nobody, a packless wolf he'd met exactly twice. Why would a billionaire alpha care about her problems? But even as she denied it, her wolf was certain. His scent, his presence, the way he'd looked at her when she'd mentioned Oliver's surgery, like her pain had physically hurt him. "Dr. Martinez wants to schedule the surgery for tomorrow morning," the coordinator continued. "With the payment cleared, Oliver can have the best surgical team in the country." "Tomorrow?" Evangeline's voice was barely a breath. "The donor specifically requested that there be no delays. Oliver's new doctor is flying in from Johns Hopkins tonight." After the coordinator left, Evangeline sat in stunned silence. Oliver had fallen back asleep, but she could see color returning to his cheeks already, as if hope itself was healing him. 2 floors up, Sebastian Blackthorne stood at the window of an empty hospital room, watching the parking lot below. He'd been here since Evangeline's frantic arrival 3 nights ago, maintaining his vigil from a distance. His wolf had nearly torn him apart when he'd felt her anguish at the competition. The moment she'd run from the kitchen, he'd known something was desperately wrong. Following her scent to the hospital had been instinctive, protective. Finding out that her brother was dying had been like taking a knife to the chest. Sebastian had made the call to his Swiss banker before he'd consciously decided to help. The money meant nothing to him, pocket change compared to his vast fortune. But to Evangeline, to the boy who was her entire world, it meant everything. He told himself it was simple pack instinct. Alphas protected those under their care, and his wolf had already claimed Evangeline as his mate, even if she didn't know it yet. But deep down, Sebastian knew it was more than that. Watching her sacrifice the competition for her brother's life had shattered something inside him. He'd spent his entire adult life believing that love was weakness, that caring made you vulnerable. Evangeline had proven him wrong with a single, selfless act. She'd chosen love over money, family over fame, sacrifice over success. Everything his cold upbringing had taught him was foolish, she'd done without hesitation. And it had been the most beautiful thing he'd ever witnessed. Now, as he watched her emerge from the hospital's main entrance, Sebastian felt the familiar pull to go to her. To reveal himself, to tell her what she meant to him. Instead, he stepped back from the window. She had enough to deal with right now. Oliver's surgery, his recovery, rebuilding their lives without the crushing weight of medical debt. The last thing she needed was a complicated alpha claiming she was his mate. But Sebastian would be watching. Protecting from the shadows until she was ready for more. His phone buzzed with a text from his head of security, hospital security upgraded as requested. Additional medical team briefed and standing by. Anonymous flower delivery scheduled for post-surgery. Sebastian allowed himself a small smile. Let her think it was coincidence, kindness from a stranger. When she was ready, when Oliver was well and safe, then Sebastian would step out of the shadows. Until then, he'd guard what was his from afar. Chapter 8. Pack your knives, Whitmore. You're done. Chef Laurence's words hit Evangeline like a slap as she walked into the Hotel Granger's kitchen for her morning shift. Oliver's surgery had been a complete success 3 days ago, and for the first time in months, she'd felt hope blooming in her chest. Now it withered and died. What do you mean, done? Evangeline set down her knife roll, confusion and dread warring in her stomach. Terminated. Effective immediately. Laurent wouldn't meet her eyes. Upper management decision. For what? I've never missed a shift, never had a single complaint. Orders came from the top floor. Laurent's voice was strained, like the words were being forced out of him. Something about incompatibility with the hotel's clientele expectations. Evangeline stared at him. She'd worked at the Granger for 5 years, clawed her way up from dishwasher to sous chef through pure skill and determination. Her work was flawless, her reputation spotless. This is about the competition, isn't it? The realization hit her like ice water. Because I left to help my brother. Laurent finally looked at her, and she saw sympathy in his eyes. There are forces in this city that don't like it when people step out of line, Evangeline. You made some powerful people uncomfortable. Supernatural elite politics. Of course. She'd embarrassed them by walking away from their precious competition, had shown that some things mattered more than their money and games. I need this job. Desperation crept into her voice. My brother just had surgery, the medical bills. I'm sorry. Laurent handed her a severance envelope. 2 weeks' pay. That's all I could manage. 2 weeks' pay wouldn't cover rent, let alone groceries and Oliver's medications. Evangeline took the envelope with numb fingers, her mind already racing through impossible math. There is one thing, Laurent said quietly, glancing around to make sure they weren't overheard. A position came available this morning. Executive personal chef, very exclusive clientele. The pay is substantial. Where? Ravenshollow Industries. Evangeline's heart stopped. Sebastian Blackthorne's company. They specifically requested someone with your qualifications, Laurent continued. Asked for you by name, actually. Strange coincidence. Not a coincidence. Never a coincidence when it came to Sebastian Blackthorne. Evangeline left the hotel in a daze, the job application burning in her pocket. By the time she reached her car, her phone was already ringing with gossip from the supernatural community. "Did you hear?" Victoria Ashworth's voice was venomous honey through the speaker. "Some nobody chef thinks she can work for the Blackthorne Alpha." "It's scandalous," another voice chimed in, Isabella Silverstone. "Sebastian needs a proper staff, not some packless stray." "She'll never last a week," Victoria laughed. "An alpha of his caliber requires appropriate company." Evangeline ended the call, her jaw set in determination. Let them talk. She needed this job, and if Sebastian Blackthorne wanted to hire her, she wasn't going to let a pack of jealous she-wolves stop her. The Ravenshollow Industries building dominated the downtown skyline, all steel and glass that reflected the afternoon sun like a beacon. Evangeline's beat-up Honda looked pathetically out of place in the parking garage full of luxury cars. The receptionist directed her to the 42nd floor, where a crisp assistant in an expensive suit was waiting. "Miss Whitmore? Mr. Blackthorne is expecting you." Sebastian's office was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than she made in a year. He stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the skyline like some kind of corporate god. "You came." His voice was warm with something that might have been relief. "I need work." Evangeline kept her voice steady. "My previous employer and I parted ways." Sebastian turned, and those ice-blue eyes held hers with the same intensity she remembered from the forest. "I heard." "Unfortunate timing." "Was it?" She met his gaze directly. "Because I'm starting to think there are no coincidences where you're concerned." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps not. Does that bother you?" "It should. The smart thing would be to walk away, to find another job that didn't involve the most powerful alpha in the city." But Oliver needed his medications, needed follow-up appointments, needed a stable home while he recovered. And if she was honest, being near Sebastian made her wolf sing in ways she didn't want to examine too closely. "The position pays 4 times what you were making at the grandeur," Sebastian said quietly. "Full medical coverage, housing allowance, and flexible scheduling for family emergencies. 4 times her salary. Enough to give Oliver everything he needed and more." "What exactly would my duties include?" "Preparing meals for myself and occasional business associates. Managing the executive kitchen. Discretion regarding my dietary preferences. Alpha preferences. Raw meat, specific preparations that most human chefs couldn't handle without questions. And because there had to be more. Men like Sebastian Blackthorne didn't hire packless wolves out of charity. And nothing else." His expression was serious, almost formal. "This is a legitimate position, Evangeline. You'd be working for Ravenshollow Industries, not for me personally. Professional boundaries will be maintained." Even as he said it, the air between them crackled with the same electricity she'd felt in the moonlit forest. "I'll take it," she said before she could change her mind. Sebastian nodded once, but she caught the flash of satisfaction in his eyes. "Welcome to Ravenshollow Industries, Chef Whitmore." Walking out of his office with a signed contract, Evangeline knew she'd just changed everything. The elite she-wolves would be furious, the supernatural community would whisper, and she'd be working mere floors away from a man who made her forget every reason why falling for an alpha was dangerous. But Oliver would be safe. Fed, housed, healthy. Whatever came next, that was worth any risk. Chapter 9. The brick crashed through Evangeline's apartment window at 2 in the morning, followed by snarls that made her blood turn to ice. "Packless bitch. Know your place." Evangeline grabbed Oliver from his bed, her brother still groggy from pain medication as glass showered their living room. 3 wolves circled their building. She could smell them, territorial and aggressive and intent on making a point. "Evie, what's happening?" Oliver clutched her arm, his thin frame shaking. "Get dressed. Now." She thrust clothes at him while speed dialing the one number that might help. Sebastian answered on the first ring. "Evangeline?" "They're here." Her voice was steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. 3 wolves, maybe more. Someone doesn't want me working for you. Stay inside. I'm coming. The line went dead. Through the broken window, Evangeline heard car doors slamming and the wolves retreating, but the message was clear. Step out of line again, and next time they wouldn't just throw rocks. Sebastian arrived with a security team and took one look at the destruction before his expression went deadly cold. Pack your things, he said quietly. You're moving to Ravenshollow Estate tonight. I can't. You can't stay here. His ice blue eyes blazed with controlled fury. Not after this. 2 hours later, Evangeline found herself driving through wrought iron gates that probably cost more than her entire yearly salary. Ravenshollow Estate sprawled across 50 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, the main house rising like something out of a fairy tale, all stone towers and leaded glass windows, beautiful and imposing in the pre-dawn darkness. Holy shit, Oliver breathed, his face pressed to the car window. Evie, this place is enormous. It was. The mansion dwarfed anything Evangeline had ever seen, let alone lived in. As Sebastian led them through the front entrance, she craned her neck to take in the soaring ceiling, marble floors, and artwork that belonged in museums. Your quarters are in the East Wing, Sebastian said, his voice echoing in the vast foyer. Private entrance, full kitchen, 3 bedrooms. Oliver will have access to the library and grounds, but the main house areas are restricted. Restricted how? Pack business. Board meetings. Things that could be dangerous for civilians. He was protecting them again, Evangeline realized. Creating boundaries that would keep her and Oliver safe from the supernatural politics that had already put them in danger. An older woman emerged from a side corridor, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, wearing a crisp black dress that screamed head of household. Mrs. Timothy, my estate manager, Sebastian introduced. She'll show you around and explain the household procedures. Mrs. Timothy's smile was warm but assessing. Welcome to Ravenshollow Estate. I understand you'll be joining our kitchen staff. Executive chef, Sebastian corrected, and something in his tone made Mrs. Timothy's eyebrows rise slightly. Of course. How wonderful. Her voice gave nothing away, but Evangeline caught the calculating look in her eyes. Their quarters were stunning, a separate wing with its own entrance, spacious rooms furnished in elegant neutrals, and a kitchen that made Evangeline's heart race with professional joy. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that seemed to stretch forever. This is temporary, Evangeline told herself as she helped Oliver settle into a bedroom larger than their entire apartment. Just until things calmed down. But as she watched her brother bounce on a king-sized bed, his face brighter than she'd seen it since before his surgery, she wondered if she was lying to herself. The Alpha doesn't usually take in strays, Mrs. Timothy said quietly, appearing in the doorway. Oliver had finally fallen asleep, and Evangeline was unpacking their few belongings. We're not strays. We're employees. Are you? Mrs. Timothy's smile was knowing. In 30 years of managing this household, I've never seen Mr. Blackthorne personally escort anyone to their quarters. Or assign them to the family wing. Family wing? These rooms haven't been used since his parents died. He had them completely renovated this week. Mrs. Timothy stepped closer, her voice dropping. Whatever this is between you two, be careful. The Alpha has enemies, and they won't hesitate to use you against him. After Mrs. Timothy left, Evangeline stood at her new bedroom window, watching the sun rise over grounds that looked like something from a dream. In the distance, she could see Sebastian's silhouette on a terrace, phone to his ear, probably dealing with the fallout from the attack. Even from here, she could sense his isolation. This beautiful mansion was a fortress, and Sebastian was trapped inside it, surrounded by luxury but alone. No friends, no family, just employees and associates and endless responsibility. Her wolf ached for him, wanted to go to him and offer comfort the way he'd offered protection. But the smart part of her brain, the part that had kept her and Oliver alive this long, knew better. Sebastian Blackthorne was the most powerful man in the city. She was a packless chef with a sick brother and more enemies than she'd realized. Some distances were too dangerous to cross. But as she watched him disappear into the house, Evangeline couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just walked willingly into the most beautiful trap of her life. Chapter 10. The portrait stopped Evangeline cold in the middle of her morning kitchen inspection. She'd been exploring the main house's executive kit Timothy, a chef's paradise with professional-grade equipment and storage that could feed an army, when she noticed the painting tucked in an alcove near the service entrance. A family of 3, a man with Sebastian's ice-blue eyes, a woman with gentle features and dark hair, and between them, a boy who couldn't have been more than 10. Sebastian, before the world had hardened him. They died when he was young. Evangeline spun to find Mrs. Timothy watching her with knowing eyes, a tea service balanced on her hands. "I didn't mean to pry. Car accident." Sebastian was 10, away at boarding school when it happened. Mrs. Timothy set down the tray and approached the portrait. He came home to an empty house and a pack that expected him to lead them. Imagine that burden on a child. Evangeline studied the painted boy's face, seeing joy there that the adult Sebastian had never shown. Who raised him? The council. Cold men who taught him that emotions were weaknesses. Mrs. Timothy's voice carried years of witnessed pain. This estate has been silent as a tomb ever since. As the days passed, Evangeline began to understand what Mrs. Timothy meant. Ravenshollow estate was magnificent but hollow, a showcase without a soul. Sebastian's quarters were pristine and untouched, like a museum display. No family photos, no personal mementos, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived there. The staff moved through the halls like ghosts, efficient and invisible. They spoke in whispers, if at all, as if laughter might disturb some ancient grief. "It's like a beautiful prison," Oliver observed one evening as they ate dinner in their private quarters. He was stronger now, color returning to his cheeks, but his young eyes saw too much. "Everyone's afraid of something." "Not afraid," Evangeline corrected, though she wasn't entirely sure. "Respectful." But she'd noticed things too. Entire wings of the house that remained locked. Staff members who disappeared at certain hours. The way conversations stopped when she entered a room. Her role as Sebastian's personal chef brought its own mysteries. He ate like a man who'd forgotten food could be pleasure, approaching each meal as mere fuel. When she prepared dishes with care and creativity, he seemed genuinely surprised by the flavors. "This is excellent," he said one evening, tasting her honey-glazed salmon. They were in his private dining room, a smaller space that felt almost intimate compared to the mansion's formal grandeur. "Thank you." Evangeline refilled his wine glass, noting how he savored each bite like he was rediscovering taste itself. "Did you always want to be a chef?" The personal question caught her off guard. In the 2 weeks she'd been here, their conversations had remained strictly professional. "Since I was 12. She settled into the chair across from him, drawn by his unexpected interest. "My parents died, and Oliver was just a baby. Cooking was the only way I could take care of him that felt like love instead of duty." Sebastian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Love through food." Something like that. She studied his face, seeing past the alpha mask to something vulnerable underneath. "What about you? Did you always want to run a business empire?" "I wanted to be an archaeologist." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did her. "I loved old things, lost civilizations. The idea that you could dig up the past and piece together forgotten stories." "What changed?" "Reality." His walls slammed back up. The pack needed an alpha, not a dreamer. After he dismissed her for the evening, Evangeline found herself wandering the estate's gardens. The grounds were as meticulously maintained as everything else, but she discovered hidden corners where wildflowers had been allowed to grow free, small rebellions against the estate's perfect control. In the old greenhouse, she found evidence of someone who'd once cared for more than appearances. Ancient gardening journals written in a feminine hand, pressed flowers between the pages, sketches of garden designs that spoke of joy and beauty for its own sake. Sebastian's mother, she realized. A woman who tried to bring life to this marble mausoleum. "She would have liked you." Evangeline jumped, turning to find Sebastian silhouetted in the greenhouse doorway. He looked almost ethereal in the moonlight filtering through the glass. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not intruding." He stepped inside, his presence filling the small space with warmth. "She spent hours here. After she died, I had everything shut up, but I couldn't bring myself to destroy her work. She was trying to make this place feel like home." "She was." Sebastian picked up one of the journals, his fingers gentle on the worn leather. "I'd forgotten that homes were supposed to feel like something other than duty." The weight of his loneliness pressed against Evangeline's chest like a physical ache. This beautiful estate was a monument to isolation, a place where a powerful man lived surrounded by everything except the one thing that mattered. "Oliver thinks the house is like a beautiful prison," she said softly. Sebastian's laugh was bitter. "He's not wrong. But lately..." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Lately it feels less like a prison and more like possibility." The greenhouse fell silent except for the whisper of wind through the glass panels. Evangeline felt the pull between them, strong as gravity, dangerous as a cliff's edge. "Sebastian. I know." He stepped back, putting careful distance between them. "I know all the reasons this is impossible. But for the first time in 17 years, this house feels alive." Walking back to her quarters, Evangeline realized the truth Mrs. Timothy had been trying to tell her. Ravenshollow estate wasn't just Sebastian's home, it was his heart. Beautiful, isolated, and desperate for someone brave enough to bring it back to life. The question was, did she dare try? Chapter 11. The sizzle of garlic hitting hot oil at midnight should have been the only sound in Ravenshollow's kitchen. Instead, Evangeline heard footsteps approaching, confident, measured, distinctly male. She glanced at the clock on the wall, confirming what she already knew. 2 a.m. The entire household should be asleep. She'd been unable to rest, her mind churning with thoughts of Sebastian's loneliness and that charged moment in the greenhouse. Cooking had always been her way of processing emotions, and tonight she'd found herself preparing his favorite meal, beef tenderloin with herb crust, perfectly rare the way his wolf preferred it. Couldn't sleep either. Sebastian's voice from the kitchen doorway made her heart skip, but she didn't turn around. She could feel him watching her, could sense the careful distance he was maintaining. Old habit. She flipped the meat, the searing sound filling the silence between them. "When I'm worried about something, I cook." "What are you worried about?" "Everything. Oliver's recovery, their uncertain future, the way her body responded every time Sebastian was near." But she couldn't say any of that. "Whether you're eating enough." It wasn't entirely a lie. She'd noticed how little he consumed during their formal dinners, picking at his food like it was an obligation rather than nourishment. Sebastian moved closer, and Evangeline caught his scent, pine and winter air and something uniquely him that made her wolf stir restlessly. "You don't need to take care of me, Evangeline. Everyone needs taking care of." She plated the tenderloin with practiced efficiency, arranging roasted vegetables around it. Even powerful alphas who think they don't need anyone. When she finally turned to face him, her breath caught. Sebastian had abandoned his usual suits for dark jeans and a gray sweater that clung to his broad shoulders. His dark hair was mussed like he'd been running his hands through it, and those ice-blue eyes held an intensity that made her knees weak. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, but he made no move to leave. "In the kitchen? It's my job. Here. In my house. In my life." His voice was rough with something that sounded like pain. "You're making this impossible." "Making what impossible?" Sebastian stepped closer, close enough that she could see the war raging in his expression. "Staying away from you. Remembering all the reasons why this can't happen." The plate trembled in Evangeline's hands. "Sebastian. Do you know how long it's been since someone cooked for me?" He reached out, his fingers brushing hers as he took the plate. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm. "Since someone cared whether I ate at all? That's what I'm here for." "No." His eyes locked onto hers, and she saw past his careful control to the man underneath, lonely, wanting, barely holding himself back. "You're here because I couldn't stand the thought of you being anywhere else. Because the moment I caught your scent in that forest, my wolf decided you belonged to me." The words hung between them, dangerous and beautiful and impossible to take back. "I'm not yours," Evangeline whispered, even as her body betrayed her, swaying toward him like a magnet. "Aren't you?" Sebastian set the plate aside and moved closer, backing her gently against the marble counter. He didn't touch her, but she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Then why does your pulse race every time I'm near? Why do you cook for me at 2 in the morning when you should be sleeping?" Because she was falling for him. Because despite every rational thought screaming that this was dangerous, her heart had already made its choice. "You don't understand," she said desperately. "I'm packless. I have nothing to offer someone like you." "Someone like me?" Sebastian's laugh was bitter. "Evangeline, I'm a man who's spent 17 years alone in a house full of ghosts. You've brought more life to this place in 3 weeks than it's seen since my parents died." His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin with devastating gentleness. "You want to know what you offer someone like me? Hope. The possibility that maybe I don't have to spend the rest of my life isolated and empty. That maybe, for the first time in my life, I could have something real." Evangeline leaned into his touch despite herself, her eyes fluttering closed. This was madness. This was everything she'd sworn to avoid. This was everything she'd ever wanted. "The council," she began, "can go to hell." Sebastian's voice was fierce. "I've spent my entire life doing what they expected, being what they wanted. For once, I want to choose for myself." When Evangeline opened her eyes, she found Sebastian watching her with an expression so raw it took her breath away. Want and need and something deeper, something that looked dangerously like love. "We can't," she whispered, even as her hand came up to cover his. "We can't," he agreed, but neither of them moved away. The kitchen fell silent around them, the rest of the world disappearing until there was nothing but this, Sebastian's hand on her face, her pulse racing under his touch, and the impossible choice stretching between them. Stay safe or take the leap. Protect her heart or trust it to a man who could destroy her with a word. Looking into Sebastian's eyes, seeing the same longing and fear reflected there, Evangeline realized the choice had already been made. The moment she'd danced with a black wolf in the moonlight, she'd been lost. Chapter 12. Evangeline checked her watch for the 5th time as she sprinted down the marble corridor towards Sebastian's private dining room, 6:01 a.m. 1 minute late on her first official day as his personal chef. After their midnight encounter in the kitchen 3 days ago, Sebastian had retreated behind professional walls so thick she could barely see the man who'd touched her face with such tenderness. This morning, Mrs. Timothy had delivered new protocols, strict meal schedules, formal presentation requirements, and the clear understanding that Chef Whitmore was expected to perform at the highest level. Translation: last chance to prove she belonged here. Evangeline burst through the service door, her knife roll secure and breakfast tray perfectly arranged, only to find Sebastian's dining room empty. Punctuality is essential in this position. She spun toward his voice, finding him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows with his back to her. Even in silhouette, he commanded the space, broad shoulders filling out a charcoal business suit, every line of his body radiating controlled power. "I apologize, Mr. Blackthorne. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't." Sebastian turned, and Evangeline's breath caught. His face was a mask of alpha authority, but those ice-blue eyes held heat that contradicted his cool tone. "I have a conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. I need fuel, not conversation." "Of course." Evangeline moved with practiced efficiency, setting his place and arranging the breakfast she'd spent an hour perfecting: steel-cut oats with honey and berries, perfectly poached eggs, and the dark roast coffee he preferred strong enough to wake the dead. She'd learned his preferences through careful observation. Sebastian ate like a man preparing for battle, consuming precise amounts of protein and complex carbohydrates. No sugar except what occurred naturally. No processed foods. Everything designed to fuel an alpha's metabolism. The presentation is acceptable, he said after tasting the eggs. The compliment was grudging, professional. Thank you, sir. But as she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. The honey, it's different. Evangeline hesitated by the door. Wildflower honey from a local apiary. I thought you might prefer something less processed than what the hotel used. Sebastian's eyes found hers across the room. For just a moment, the professional mask slipped, and she saw appreciation there, not just for the food, but for the fact that she'd paid attention to details no one else bothered with. It's better, he admitted. The rest of the morning passed in carefully choreographed encounters. Evangeline delivered his mid-morning snack, dark chocolate and espresso, to his office, where she found him in full alpha mode, commanding a room full of suited executives through sheer presence alone. Gentlemen, I believe we're done here. Sebastian's voice cut through their discussion like a blade. The executives filed out, most avoiding eye contact with their formidable leader. Your snack, Mr. Blackthorne. Evangeline set the tray on his desk, noting the tension in his shoulders, the tight line of his jaw. Thank you. He reached for the espresso, and their fingers brushed for just an instant. The contact sent familiar electricity shooting up her arm, and she saw Sebastian's pupils dilate in response. Will there be anything else? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. No. That will be all. But as she reached the office door, he spoke again. Evangeline. Her name on his lips was rough silk. The chocolate, where did you source it? Belgian. 70% cacao. She turned back to find him watching her with an intensity that made her knees weak. I noticed you prefer bitter to sweet. In most things, Sebastian agreed, his gaze never leaving her face. The double meaning hung between them, dangerous and thrilling. Lunch was delivered to Sebastian's private study, a lighter meal of grilled salmon and quinoa salad that he consumed while reviewing contracts. Evangeline had learned to read his moods through the set of his shoulders, the rhythm of his breathing. Today he was restless, energy coiled tight beneath his composed exterior. The seasoning is perfect, he said without looking up from his documents. Lemon and dill. Simple but effective. Like its creator. The unexpected compliment made heat bloom in Evangeline's chest. This was dangerous territory, these moments when Sebastian's careful control slipped and she glimpsed the man beneath the alpha mask. I should go, she said quickly. Should you? Sebastian finally looked up, and the hunger in his eyes had nothing to do with food. Or are you running away again? I'm being professional. So am I, mostly. His smile was predatory and beautiful. But you make it challenging. Evangeline's heart hammered against her ribs. 3 days ago, he'd told her his wolf had claimed her. Since then, he'd been the picture of professional distance, except for these moments when his guard dropped and she saw the truth. He wanted her just as desperately as she wanted him. This can't happen, she whispered. It's already happening. Sebastian stood, moving around his desk with predatory grace. The question is whether we're brave enough to admit it. Before she could respond, his phone rang, harsh and insistent. Sebastian's expression shifted back to business mode, but his eyes never left her face. Answer that, Evangeline said softly. I'll see you at dinner. Walking back to the kitchen, Evangeline realized the truth she'd been fighting. Professional boundaries were just pretty lies they told themselves. What was happening between them was inevitable as gravity, dangerous as fire, and absolutely impossible to stop. Chapter 13. I want beef Wellington, lobster thermidor, and chocolate soufflé. Dinner for 12. In 2 hours. Sebastian's impossible demand hit Evangeline like a slap as she stood in his office doorway at 5 p.m., having just finished preparing his afternoon snack. Around the room, his business associates shifted uncomfortably, even they could sense the tension crackling between their alpha and his chef. 12 guests. Evangeline kept her voice level despite the fury building in her chest. You didn't mention. Are you questioning my orders? Sebastian's ice blue eyes were cold as winter steel. Perhaps this position is beyond your capabilities. It was the third impossible demand this week. Monday, he'd wanted a 7-course meal with 30 minutes notice. Wednesday, he'd criticized her perfectly prepared steak for being uninspired. Yesterday, he'd sent back her signature dessert claiming it was too sweet for his palate. Games. He was playing games with her, testing her limits, pushing her until she broke. "I'll have it ready," Evangeline said through gritted teeth. "See that you do." Sebastian turned back to his associates, dismissing her like hired help. 2 hours later, Evangeline had produced a miracle, 12 perfectly plated dinners that would have challenged a team of 5 chefs. Her hands were burned from rushing, her back ached from the frantic pace, and her temper was hanging by a thread. She wheeled the service cart into Sebastian's private dining room only to find it empty. "Mr. Blackthorne," she called out. Silence. Evangeline checked the main dining room, the library, even the terrace. Finally, she found Sebastian in his study, alone, reading contracts like nothing had happened. "Where are your guests?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. Sebastian looked up with feigned surprise. "Guests? The 12 people I just cooked for. The ones you said would be here at 7. Plans changed." He turned back to his documents. "I'll have the Wellington later. You can dispose of the rest." Something inside Evangeline snapped. "No." Sebastian's head jerked up. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Evangeline stepped into his study, fury radiating from every line of her body. "I'm done with your games, Sebastian. Done pretending this is about food or professional standards or anything except you trying to drive me away. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you?" She moved closer, ignoring the way his presence made her pulse race. "Impossible deadlines, last-minute changes, criticism of dishes you know are perfect. You're testing me, pushing me to see how much I'll take before I break." Sebastian stood slowly, his face a mask of alpha authority. "You work for me. I can demand whatever. Cut the crap." Evangeline's voice cut through his like a blade. "This isn't about being my employer. This is about you being terrified of what's happening between us." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sebastian's carefully controlled expression cracked, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. "You don't know anything about what I'm feeling. Don't I?" Evangeline stepped closer, close enough to see the war raging in his eyes. "You want me. Your wolf claimed me that night in the forest, and it's driving you crazy because you can't control it. So you're trying to drive me away before you do something that scares you." "Evangeline. I'm not running." Her voice was fierce, determined. "Not from you, not from this, not from whatever game you think you're playing. So either fire me or stop treating me like an enemy you need to defeat." The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of Sebastian's isolation and Evangeline's hard-won strength. Finally, Sebastian sank back into his chair, running his hands through his dark hair. "You're right." His voice was barely a whisper. "God help me, you're right about all of it." The fight went out of Evangeline as quickly as it had come. Looking at Sebastian now, shoulders bent, defenses shattered, she saw not the powerful alpha but the lonely man underneath. "Why?" she asked softly. "Because everyone leaves." Sebastian's laugh was bitter. "My parents died. The council shipped me off to boarding school. Every woman who's shown interest has wanted the position, not the man. I learned early that caring about people just gives them power to hurt you. So you hurt them first. It's safer." He looked up at her then, and the pain in his eyes made her chest ache. "But with you? Christ, Evangeline, I don't know how to be safe. From the moment I caught your scent, you've been under my skin. In my thoughts. Making me want things I swore I'd never want again." Evangeline moved around his desk slowly, giving him time to object. When he didn't, she knelt beside his chair, her hand covering his. "I'm not going anywhere," she said quietly. "No matter how impossible you try to make it." Sebastian's fingers intertwined with hers, and she felt some of the tension leave his body. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. How to want someone without trying to control them. We figure it out together. Evangeline squeezed his hand. No more games. No more tests. Just honest. Sebastian brought her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her palm. Just honest, he agreed. Looking into his eyes, Evangeline saw the exact moment when the games ended and something real began. Chapter 14. Sebastian was waiting in the kitchen when Evangeline arrived at 6 a.m., 2 cups of coffee already steaming on the marble counter. Not demanding breakfast. Not issuing orders from his office. Just waiting. For her. Good morning. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it, uncertain in a way that made her heart flutter. Morning. Evangeline accepted the coffee, noting that he'd prepared it exactly how she liked it. Cream, no sugar. When had he noticed that? I thought. Sebastian ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture she was learning meant he was out of his depth. I thought we could start over. Properly this time. The simple words carried weight she felt in her chest. No games. No tests. Just Sebastian, offering her a choice to build something real. I'd like that, she said quietly. Relief flickered across his features. Good. Because I have a confession to make. Oh. I don't actually need a personal chef. Sebastian's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. I'd been eating takeout and protein bars for the better part of 5 years. Evangeline stared at him. Then why? Because you needed the job. Because Oliver needed surgery. Because I'm selfish enough to use whatever excuse I could to keep you close. His honesty was devastating. The position was created for you, Evangeline. Only you. Before she could process that revelation fully, the Kit Timothy door burst open and Oliver bounded in, moving with more energy than she'd seen since before his illness. Evie, you should see the library. It's like something out of Harry Potter, and Oliver stopped short when he saw Sebastian. Oh. Hi, Mr. Blackthorne. Sebastian, the Alpha corrected gently. And good morning, Oliver. How are you feeling? Amazing, actually. Oliver's grin was infectious. Dr. Martinez says my blood work is the best it's been in 2 years. Whatever magic you worked with that surgery. No magic, Sebastian interrupted. Just good doctors and better timing. But Evangeline caught the way Sebastian watched her brother, protective, almost paternal. The same way he'd looked at her when she was in crisis. I was wondering, Sebastian continued, addressing Oliver directly. Would you be interested in a tutor? I noticed you're missing school for recovery, and I know someone who specializes in accelerated programs. Oliver's eyes went wide. Seriously? That would be incredible. I've been worried about falling behind, and Evie's been stressed about. Oliver, Evangeline warned softly. It's no trouble, Sebastian assured her. Dr. Reeves is excellent. She helped me catch up when I missed school after my parents died. The casual reference to his own trauma, offered as comfort to her brother, made Evangeline's throat tight with emotion. Can I, Evie? Please? Oliver bounced on his toes like the teenager he was finally allowed to be again. If you want to, Evangeline managed. I'll make the arrangements, Sebastian said. Then, to Oliver, there's something else. I have a full workshop in the basement, woodworking, electronics, some basic engineering equipment. You mentioned wanting to build things? Oliver looked like Christmas had come early. You'd let me use it? I'd insist on it. The space has been empty too long. Sebastian's smile was genuine, transforming his entire face. Maybe you can show me some of your designs. I'd like to see what you're working on. As Oliver chattered excitedly about his project ideas, Evangeline watched Sebastian listen with complete attention. Not the polite interest of an adult humoring a child, but real engagement. He asked thoughtful questions, offered suggestions, treated Oliver like his thoughts mattered. Like family. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Sebastian wasn't just being kind to Oliver to win points with her. He genuinely cared about her brother's happiness, his future, his dreams. "I should get to school prep," Oliver announced. "Sebastian, can I see the workshop later?" "Absolutely. After lunch?" "Perfect." Oliver bounded toward the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Sebastian? Thanks. For everything. For taking care of us." After Oliver left, silence settled over the kitchen. Evangeline studied Sebastian's face, seeing wonder there, like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. "He called you Sebastian," she said softly. "He did." Sebastian's voice held amazement. "I can't remember the last time someone his age wasn't afraid of me." "He's not afraid because you haven't given him reason to be." Evangeline moved closer, drawn by the vulnerability in his expression. "You were gentle with him. Patient. He's important to you. That makes him important to me." The simple declaration carried more weight than poetry. Sebastian was offering to care for the most precious thing in her world, not as a manipulation or power play, but because he understood that loving her meant loving Oliver too. "Sebastian. I know we're taking this slowly," he interrupted. "I know there are still obstacles and complications. But this morning, watching you both in my kit Timothy, in my home." He paused, searching for words. For the first time in 17 years, this place felt like it could be more than just a house. Evangeline's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe Mrs. Timothy was right. Maybe these rooms were meant for family after all." The hope in his voice was fragile as spun glass, beautiful as sunrise. For the first time since this all began, Evangeline let herself imagine it, a future where Oliver had a father figure, where she had a partner, where this magnificent house rang with laughter instead of silence. It was terrifying. It was perfect. It was possible. Chapter 15. The orchids appeared on Evangeline's kitchen counter like magic, 12 stems of rare white phalaenopsis that probably cost more than her monthly salary. No note. No explanation. Just breathtaking beauty that made her chest ache with longing. It had been a week since their understanding, a week of careful professional distance that felt like walking on broken glass. Sebastian had been nothing but courteous, saying please and thank you, commenting on her meals with genuine appreciation, treating her exactly like the employee she was supposed to be. Except for the gifts. The orchids followed the hand-delivered coffee beans from a boutique roaster in Seattle, which had followed the first edition cookbook that appeared in her quarters, a 1920s French culinary guide she'd mentioned admiring once, which had followed the silk scarf that perfectly matched her eyes, left draped over her chef's station without ceremony. Sebastian was courting her in the most maddening way possible, through gestures that could be dismissed as employer generosity while carrying the weight of something much deeper. "He's trying to drive me insane," Evangeline muttered, arranging the orchids in a crystal vase that had also mysteriously appeared. "Who's driving you insane?" Oliver wandered into the kitchen, already dressed for his tutoring session with Dr. Reeves. "No one. How's the studying going?" "Amazing. Dr. Reeves thinks I might be able to test out of my sophomore year entirely." Oliver grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, another Sebastian edition, always perfectly stocked with organic produce. "She says I have a natural aptitude for engineering." Pride swelled in Evangeline's chest. "That's wonderful, little wolf. Sebastian thinks so too. He said when I'm ready, he'll show me some of the sustainable technology projects Ravenshollow Industries is developing." Oliver's face lit up. "Did you know they're working on revolutionary solar panel designs? And wind turbines that are completely silent?" Of course Sebastian would share his passions with her brother. Another way of showing he cared without directly addressing the tension crackling between them. "That sounds fascinating," Evangeline managed. "He's really cool, Evie. Not scary like everyone says. More like..." Oliver paused, searching for words. "Like he's lonely and doesn't know how to fix it." From the mouths of babes. That afternoon, Evangeline delivered Sebastian's lunch to his office and found him staring out the window, his untouched meal growing cold on his desk. "The salmon will taste better while it's still warm," she said quietly. Sebastian turned, and the hunger in his eyes when he looked at her had nothing to do with food. "Thank you for the orchids," she continued. "They're beautiful." "You're welcome." His voice was carefully neutral, but she caught the way his hands flexed at his sides, like he was fighting the urge to reach for her. "Sebastian. How's Oliver's tutoring progressing?" The subject change was abrupt, clearly designed to redirect them away from dangerous territory. But Evangeline saw through it to the man desperately trying to maintain control. "He's thriving. Dr. Reeves says he might graduate early." "Good. He's brilliant. He deserves every opportunity." Sebastian moved to his desk, putting careful distance between them. "I've been thinking, if he's interested in engineering, there are some summer programs at MIT that might suit him. He's 14. Gifted programs accept younger students. I could make some calls. Always taking care of them. Always finding ways to improve their lives while keeping himself at arm's length." "Why do you do that?" Evangeline asked softly. "Do what?" "Take care of everyone except yourself." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" She moved closer, ignoring his sharp intake of breath. "You pay for Oliver's surgery, create a job for me, give us a home, arrange tutoring, plan his future, all while acting like none of it means anything to you." "It doesn't." "Liar." The word was gentle, not accusatory. "You care, Sebastian. You care so much it terrifies you." For a moment, his mask slipped completely. She saw everything: longing, fear, hope, desperation, all warring in his expression. "Evangeline." Her name was rough on his lips. "You don't understand. If I let myself care, if I let myself want this." "What? What happens if you let yourself be happy?" "I lose it." The words were torn from somewhere deep inside him. "I lose everything that matters, just like before." Evangeline's heart broke for the 10-year-old boy who'd lost his parents and learned that love meant pain. "Not everyone leaves," she whispered. "Everyone leaves." Sebastian stepped back, rebuilding his walls in real time. "I should let you get back to work." Dismissal. Professional distance. The careful dance they'd been performing for days. But as Evangeline headed for the door, she caught sight of Sebastian's reflection in the window, a man watching her leave with the expression of someone drowning. "Sebastian?" She paused at the threshold. "Yes?" "Thank you. For the orchids. For everything." She met his eyes in the reflection. "But you should know, I'm not going anywhere. No matter how hard you try to push me away." Walking back to the kitchen, Evangeline realized they were at an impasse. Sebastian was too afraid to reach for what he wanted, and she was too proud to chase someone who wouldn't let himself be caught. Something had to give. The question was what? Chapter 16. "Are you serious right now?" Oliver's voice cracked with excitement as Sebastian led him through the marble lobby of Ravenshollow Tower. Sebastian couldn't help but smile at the 14-year-old's wonder. "Completely serious. I thought you might like to see where the real work happens." The Ravenshollow Industries headquarters rose 52 floors above the city, each level a testament to Sebastian's business empire. But watching Oliver's eyes go wide as they entered the private elevator, Sebastian felt prouder of his achievements than he had in years. "This elevator is faster than the one in our apartment building," Oliver observed, pressing his face to the glass as they rose above the city line. "Pneumatic system. Cuts travel time by 60%. Sebastian found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did at work. Oliver's enthusiasm was infectious, reminding him why he'd fallen in love with building things in the first place. The 52nd floor was Sebastian's domain: executive offices, conference rooms, and his private workshop where he developed prototypes for Ravenshollow's innovation division. "Holy shit," Oliver breathed, then immediately flushed red. "Sorry, I mean, wow." "Holy shit is appropriate," Sebastian said seriously, earning a relieved grin. Wait until you see the lab. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of excitement as Sebastian showed Oliver everything: the 3D printing facility, the testing lab for renewable energy prototypes, the computer modeling systems that could simulate environmental impact before a single part was manufactured. You built all this? Oliver asked, running his fingers reverently over a wind turbine model. Not alone. I had help from brilliant engineers and designers. Sebastian paused. People who believed in building something better than what came before. Like what? Sebastian considered the question seriously. Oliver deserved honesty, not corporate speak. Like a world where being powerful means protecting what matters, not destroying it. Where success is measured by what you give back, not what you take. Oliver looked up at him with something like hero worship. Is that why you helped us? Because you believe in protecting people? The simple question hit Sebastian like a punch to the chest. When had this boy become so important to him? When had making Oliver smile become as essential as breathing? I helped you because you're family, Sebastian said quietly. Oliver's face went very still. Family? Your sister is. Sebastian searched for words that wouldn't reveal too much. Evangeline is extraordinary. And you're her heart. That makes you mine to protect too. She loves you, you know. Oliver's voice was matter of fact, the way only teenagers could be about earth-shattering revelations. Sebastian's breath caught. Oliver. She tries to hide it, but I can tell. She gets this look when you're around, like she's happy and terrified at the same time. Oliver tilted his head, studying Sebastian with startling intensity. You love her too, don't you? The truth sat in Sebastian's throat like a stone. Of course he loved her. He'd probably loved her from that first night in the forest when she danced with his wolf under the moonlight. It's complicated, he said finally. Why? Because she's not pack royalty or whatever? Oliver's expression turned fierce, protective of his sister in a way that reminded Sebastian painfully of himself at that age. Because that's bullshit. Evie's worth 10 of those fancy she-wolves who keep calling the house. They call the house? All the time. Victoria something, Isabella somebody else. They want to know when you're hosting parties so they can crash them. Oliver rolled his eyes. Evie always hangs up on them. Pride and possessiveness warred in Sebastian's chest. His mate, defending their territory from other females. Oliver, about your sister and me. You're both idiots. Oliver's blunt assessment made Sebastian blink. You're perfect for each other, anyone can see it. She makes you smile, and you make her feel safe. What's complicated about that? The supernatural world has rules. Screw the rules. Oliver's voice was passionate, conviction radiating from his slight frame. My parents died when I was 3. Evie raised me, sacrificed everything for me, never complained once. She deserves to be happy. And you? Oliver paused, suddenly shy. You're the first person who's ever made her believe she could have both, me and something for herself. Sebastian's throat tightened with emotion. You're wise for 14. I'm wise for any age, Oliver grinned. Must be the good genes. As they headed back toward the elevator, Oliver grabbed Sebastian's arm. Sebastian? Can I ask you something? Anything. If you and Evie. I mean, if things work out between you. Oliver's voice was careful, hopeful. Would that make you my brother? Or like, my dad? The question hit Sebastian like lightning. This boy, brilliant, brave, funny Oliver, was asking if Sebastian wanted to be his family. Really, truly his family. Which would you prefer? Sebastian managed. Oliver considered this seriously. Brother might be weird since you're dating my sister. But Dad. He looked up at Sebastian with eyes that held too much experience for his age. I never had one of those. Think you'd be any good at it? Sebastian thought of his own father, distant but loving in his way, gone too soon. He thought of the cold men who'd raised him after, who'd taught him duty but never affection. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'd like to try. If you'd let me." Oliver's smile could have powered the city. "I'd like that too." Standing in his office tower, looking out over an empire he'd built from scratch, Sebastian realized none of it mattered compared to this, a teenage boy willing to trust him with the title of father. "Come on," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Let's go home. I think your sister's making pot roast tonight." "Home," Oliver repeated, testing the word. "I like the sound of that." So did Sebastian. More than he'd ever imagined possible. Chapter 17. The afternoon sun streamed through the greenhouse windows as Evangeline carefully repotted one of Sebastian's mother's surviving orchids. Oliver sat cross-legged nearby, sketching designs for a solar panel array while classical music drifted from the estate's sound system. Peace. For the first time in years, Evangeline felt genuine peace. "This one's going to work," Oliver announced, holding up his sketch. "Sebastian's going to flip when he sees the efficiency calculations." "Sebastian's going to what?" she asked, smiling at her brother's growing confidence. "Be impressed." "Duh." Oliver grinned. "He said I could present it to the engineering team next week if the math checks out." Evangeline's chest warmed at the casual way Oliver said Sebastian's name now, like he belonged to them. Like they were really becoming a family. The greenhouse door opened with its familiar creak, and she looked up expecting Sebastian, only to freeze when a different silhouette filled the doorway. Theodore Ashworth stepped inside like he owned the place, his golden hair perfectly styled and his expensive suit tailored to show off his lean build. He was as handsome as ever, she noted distantly, but looking at him now felt like examining a photograph of someone she used to know. "Hello, Evangeline." His voice carried that same confident charm that had once made her heart flutter. "You look well." Oliver's pencil stopped moving. Her brother's enhanced hearing had picked up the tension radiating from her, and she could see him preparing to bolt for help. "Stay put," she murmured to Oliver, then stood slowly. "Theodore. What are you doing here?" "I came to see you, of course." Theodore's smile was perfectly calculated, warm enough to seem sincere, practiced enough to work on most women. "We need to talk." "No, we don't." Evangeline's voice was steady, proud of how little emotion leaked through. "We said everything that needed saying 2 years ago." "Did we?" Theodore moved closer, ignoring Oliver completely. As if her brother were invisible. "Because I think I made a mistake, Evie. A terrible mistake I'd like to correct." The familiar nickname on his lips made her skin crawl. Only Oliver called her that now, and hearing it from Theodore felt like theft. "The only mistake was trusting you in the first place." Evangeline crossed her arms, putting physical barriers between them. "Now leave. You're trespassing. On Blackthorne property, yes." Theodore's expression shifted, calculation replacing charm. "Interesting how quickly you've landed on your feet, sweetheart. From Packless Nobody to the Ravenshollow Alphas, what would you call yourself? Chef? Mistress? Pet?" Heat flooded Evangeline's cheeks, but before she could respond, Oliver was on his feet. "Don't talk to my sister like that." Her 14-year-old brother stepped protectively in front of her, his slight frame vibrating with fury. "And don't call her sweetheart. You lost that right when you called me a burden." Theodore finally looked at Oliver, his lip curling with the same disdain she remembered from that terrible night. "The sick puppy speaks." "How touching." "Oliver, go find Sebastian," Evangeline said quietly, her wolf stirring with dangerous energy. "I'm not leaving you alone with him. Go. Now." Oliver hesitated, then bolted for the door. Theodore watched him leave with amusement, like Oliver was an entertaining distraction rather than a person worth considering. "Still playing nursemaid to the defective, I see." Theodore circled her slowly, predatory and confident. "Though I suppose that's changed now that you have Blackthorne's protection. Quite the upgrade from your little hovel in the city." "What do you want, Theodore?" "You. Back where you belong." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. It made her stomach turn. "I've reconsidered our arrangement." Evangeline laughed, sharp and bitter. "Have you? How generous. The pack has decided you might be useful after all. An alliance with Blackthorne could benefit the Ashworths significantly." Theodore reached for her face, and she jerked away. "Mother thinks you could be manageable, with the right guidance." Manageable. The word tasted like poison. "And Oliver?" Theodore shrugged. "Boarding school. Switzerland has excellent facilities for special cases." The casual cruelty of it, suggesting she abandon her brother after everything they'd been through, made Evangeline see red. "Get out." Her voice was deadly quiet. "Get out before I do something we'll both regret." "Or what? You'll set your alpha on me?" Theodore's confidence wavered slightly. "Blackthorne's just amusing himself, Evangeline. Men like him don't mate with women like you. When he gets bored. That's enough." Sebastian's voice cut through the greenhouse like a blade. He stood in the doorway, Oliver behind him, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Theodore straightened, some of his arrogance faltering. "Blackthorne. I was just threatening what's mine." Sebastian moved into the space with lethal grace, every line of his body radiating controlled violence. "On my property. In my home. I was simply speaking with an old friend. You were insulting my mate." The words hung in the air like a bomb. Sebastian stepped between Theodore and Evangeline, his presence a wall of protection. "And suggesting harm to her family." Evangeline's heart stopped. Mate. Sebastian had called her his mate in front of another alpha, claiming her publicly in a way that couldn't be taken back. Theodore's face went white, then red with fury. "Mate? She's packless trash." Sebastian moved faster than human eyes could follow. One moment Theodore was standing, the next he was pressed against the greenhouse wall with Sebastian's hand at his throat. "Choose your next words very carefully," Sebastian said conversationally. "Because they might be your last. You can't be serious." Theodore's voice was strangled. "The council will never. The council will accept my choice. As will you." Sebastian's grip tightened slightly. "Evangeline is under my protection, as is her brother. Threaten them again, and I'll consider it an act of war." He released Theodore, who stumbled backward, gasping. "This isn't over," Theodore snarled, straightening his jacket. "The Ashworth pack remembers its enemies." "So does the Ravenshollow pack," Sebastian replied smoothly. "Get off my land. Don't come back." Theodore cast one last venomous look at Evangeline, then stalked out of the greenhouse. In the silence that followed, Evangeline became aware of her heart hammering against her ribs, of Oliver pressed against her side, of Sebastian watching her with fierce intensity. "Are you all right?" Sebastian's voice was gentle now, the deadly alpha replaced by the man who brought her orchids. "You called me your mate." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Sebastian's expression grew uncertain. Yes. If that's presumptuous." "It's not." Evangeline stepped toward him, drawn by the vulnerability flickering in his ice-blue eyes. "But it changes everything." "I know." Sebastian's hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin. "I'm done pretending this is anything other than what it is. You're mine, Evangeline. Both of you. And I'll protect what's mine." The promise in his voice sent shivers down her spine. Theodore's return had shattered their careful peace, but it had also forced Sebastian to claim her publicly. There was no going back now. Chapter 18. The storm arrived like a harbinger of change, rolling across the estate with the kind of violence that made even the strongest wolves seek shelter. Evangeline stood at the kitchen window, watching lightning fracture the sky while thunder shook the mansion's ancient bones. 3 hours had passed since Theodore's departure, 3 hours of careful normalcy where Sebastian had retreated to his office and she'd thrown herself into preparing dinner no one seemed hungry enough to eat. Oliver sat at the kitchen island, pretending to focus on his engineering homework while stealing worried glances at her. Her brother knew her too well, knew the way she channeled emotional turmoil into aggressive chopping and violent whisking. The carrots didn't do anything wrong, Oliver observed mildly as she decimated another bunch. They're fine. Evangeline's knife work was precise, controlled. Unlike everything else in her life right now. Evie. Oliver's voice carried that gentle wisdom that made him seem older than his 14 years. You don't have to pretend with me. That guy really shook you up. The knife stilled in her hands. Theodore's words echoed in her memory: packless trash, defective puppy, boarding school in Switzerland. But worse than his cruelty was the casual way he dismissed everything she and Oliver had built together. I'm fine, she repeated, but her voice cracked on the lie. Another lightning flash illuminated the kitchen, followed immediately by thunder that rattled the windows. In the sudden brightness, Evangeline caught sight of Sebastian standing in the doorway, his hair damp from the rain and his usual composure completely shattered. He looked lost. Like the 10-year-old boy who'd come home from boarding school to find his world destroyed. Sebastian? She set down the knife, moving toward him instinctively. What's wrong? I can't. He ran a hand through his wet hair, leaving it standing in dark spikes. The storm. I need to check the security systems, make sure. Another crack of thunder made him flinch visibly. Evangeline had never seen Sebastian show weakness, never seen him as anything other than perfectly controlled. But now he looked like he was barely holding himself together. Oliver, she said quietly, not taking her eyes off Sebastian. Why don't you go work on your project in the workshop? The basement will be quieter. Her brother, bless him, understood immediately. Sure thing. Sebastian, the new solar panel designs are coming along great. I'll show you tomorrow when the weather's better. After Oliver left, Evangeline approached Sebastian carefully, like she might a wounded animal. It's just a storm, she said gently. I know that. His voice was sharp, defensive. I'm not a child afraid of thunder. But his hands were shaking, and his breathing was too quick, too shallow. Another lightning flash lit up the kitchen, and Sebastian's entire body went rigid. Understanding crashed over Evangeline like a wave. The accident. Your parents died in a storm. Sebastian's mask crumbled completely. Car accident. Lightning struck a tree, brought it down across the road. They never had a chance to. His voice broke. I was safe at school while they were driving through hell to get home to me. The raw pain in his voice made Evangeline's chest ache. Without thinking, she closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around his waist. Sebastian went still, like he'd forgotten how to accept comfort. I'm sorry, she whispered against his chest. I'm so sorry. For a moment, Sebastian remained frozen. Then his arms came around her, crushing her against him like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. Every storm, he said into her hair. Every storm, I'm 10 years old again, waiting for a phone call that never comes. You're not alone now. Evangeline pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. You're not that scared little boy anymore. Aren't I? Sebastian's laugh was bitter. Today, when I saw Theodore threatening you, touching you, I wanted to kill him. Actually kill him. What kind of man does that make me? The kind who protects what he loves. The words hung between them, honest and terrifying and true. Evangeline. Thunder crashed overhead, and this time Sebastian didn't flinch. His focus was entirely on her face, on the confession that had slipped out without permission. You love me? His voice was wondering, like he couldn't quite believe it. Yes. There was no point in denying it now. Despite every rational thought telling me it's impossible, despite knowing you could break my heart without trying, yes, I love you. Sebastian's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. Impossible, he repeated. That's exactly what this is. A packless she-wolf and a broken alpha who doesn't know how to be anything other than alone. Then we'll figure it out together. Evangeline rose on her toes, bringing their faces closer. No more distance. No more pretending. Just us. When Sebastian kissed her, it was like coming home and losing herself at the same time. His mouth was warm and desperate, tasting of coffee and something uniquely him that made her wolf sing with recognition. Mine, her wolf whispered. Finally mine. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together as lightning continued to flash outside. I've never, Sebastian's voice was rough. I've never let anyone this close. I know. Evangeline's fingers traced the strong line of his jaw. I've never trusted anyone with Oliver's future. With mine. What are we doing? Something terrifying, she admitted. Something that might destroy us both. Or save us. Sebastian's lips found hers again, softer this time, like a promise. Stay with me tonight. Please. I don't want to face the storm alone. Evangeline knew what he was asking, not just for company, but for intimacy, for the complete surrender of the walls they'd both built so carefully. Yes, she whispered against his mouth. Yes to all of it. The storm raged outside, but inside the kitchen of Ravenshollow estate, two damaged souls found shelter in each other's arms. For the first time in their lives, neither of them felt alone. Tomorrow would bring consequences, the council's reaction, Theodore's revenge, the supernatural world's judgment. But tonight belonged to them, to the love that had bloomed despite every obstacle. Tonight, they chose each other. Chapter 19. The midnight blue gown arrived at dawn with an army of accessories that made Evangeline's breath catch. She stood in her quarters, staring at the Valentino creation spread across her bed like liquid starlight, silk so fine it seemed to shimmer with its own light, cut in lines that would transform her from Sebastian's chef into something that belonged on red carpets and magazine covers. Beside it lay a jewelry box from Cartier containing sapphire earrings that probably cost more than she'd made in her entire life, and shoes from Louboutin that whispered promises of power with every scarlet sole. Holy shit, Evie. Oliver's voice came from the doorway, awed and slightly overwhelmed. You're going to look like a queen. That's the point, she murmured, running her fingers over the silk. After last night, after Sebastian had held her through the storm, after they'd crossed every line they'd drawn between them, everything had changed. Including her role in his world. The full moon banquet was supernatural high society's most exclusive event, where pack alliances were forged and broken over champagne and carefully orchestrated small talk. Sebastian attending with a date would be newsworthy enough. Sebastian attending with a packless she-wolf as his declared mate would be nothing short of revolutionary. Are you nervous? Oliver settled on the edge of her bed, careful not to disturb the gown. Terrified, Evangeline admitted. These people are going to tear me apart. Let them try. Her brother's voice carried a fierce protectiveness that reminded her how much he'd grown. You belong with Sebastian. Anyone with eyes can see that. 3 hours later, Evangeline barely recognized herself in the mirror. The gown fit like it had been made for her body specifically, the midnight silk making her skin glow and her eyes seem larger, more mysterious. The sapphires caught the light with every breath, and her hair had been swept into an elegant updo that exposed the graceful line of her neck. She looked like she belonged in Sebastian's world. The question was whether his world would accept her. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Sebastian stepped through the door and went absolutely still, his ice blue eyes darkening as they traveled from her face to her feet and back again. Christ, Evangeline. His voice was rough silk. You're going to stop every heart in that room. That's not necessarily a good thing, she pointed out, but warmth bloomed in her chest at the hunger in his gaze. Sebastian moved closer, magnificent in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, black wool that emphasized his broad shoulders and the predatory grace with which he moved. He looked every inch the powerful alpha, born to command and rule. Second thoughts, he asked softly, reading the uncertainty in her expression. About us? Never. Evangeline straightened her shoulders, calling on every ounce of strength that had gotten her through years of struggle. About walking into a room full of people who think I'm not good enough for you? Constantly. Then let me tell you what I see. Sebastian's hands settled on her waist, anchoring her. I see a woman who raised her brother with nothing but determination and love. Who built a career on pure talent despite having no connections or advantages. Who faced down a former lover's cruelty without flinching. His thumb traced along her jaw. I see my mate. My equal. The other half of my soul. The words settled into her bones like a benediction, steadying her nerves and straightening her spine. Ready? Sebastian offered his arm with old-world courtesy. Ready. The grand ballroom of the Celestial Hotel had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, all crystal chandeliers and midnight flowers, elegant couples waltzing across marble floors under the glow of 1,000 candles. This was supernatural society at its most refined, alphas in perfectly cut tuxedos, their mates draped in designer gowns and jewels that could fund small countries. The moment Sebastian and Evangeline appeared in the doorway, the room went silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward them with a mixture of shock, curiosity, and barely concealed hostility. Ignore them, Sebastian murmured, his hand covering hers on his arm. You belong here. They moved through the crowd like royalty, Sebastian nodding to acquaintances with cool politeness while Evangeline focused on not tripping in her designer heels. She caught fragments of whispered conversations, Packless, gold digger, what is Blackthorne thinking? But Sebastian's presence beside her made the words bounce off like arrows against armor. Sebastian. A woman's voice cut through the murmurs, bright and sharp as breaking glass. What a, surprised to see you here. Evangeline turned to find a stunning blonde approaching, her silver gown clearly worth more than most people's cars. Behind her trailed a small army of equally beautiful, equally hostile she-wolves. Victoria. Sebastian's greeting was polite ice. Ladies. Victoria Ashworth, Theodore's sister, Evangeline realized with a chill. The family resemblance was unmistakable, all golden perfection and calculated charm. And you must be the chef, Victoria continued, her smile sharp enough to cut. How novel. Evangeline Whitmore, Evangeline said evenly, extending her hand with practiced grace. It's lovely to meet you. Victoria's handshake was brief, dismissive. I'm sure it is. Though I have to say, Sebastian, when I heard you were bringing a date, I assumed. She let the sentence hang, the implication clear. You assumed wrong. Sebastian's voice carried enough alpha authority to make several nearby wolves step back. Allow me to introduce Evangeline Whitmore. My mate. The word rang across the ballroom like a bell, and this time the silence was absolute. Evangeline felt every gaze in the room fix on her with laser intensity, some shocked, others calculating, most openly hostile. Your mate. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. But she's perfect, Sebastian finished smoothly. Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe the council is waiting. He guided Evangeline away before Victoria could recover, leaving the other she-wolves in their wake like beautiful, furious statues. That went well, Evangeline muttered. That was nothing, Sebastian said grimly. The real test is ahead. The Ravenshollow Council occupied a private alcove overlooking the ballroom, 5 ancient wolves whose combined power could topple governments or crown kings. They watched Sebastian and Evangeline approach with expressions that revealed nothing and promised everything. Counselors. Sebastian's greeting was formal, respectful. Allow me to present Evangeline Whitmore. Elder Morrison, the council's leader, studied Evangeline with eyes like winter storms. Miss Whitmore. We've heard interesting things about you. All true, I hope, Evangeline replied, meeting his gaze steadily. A ghost of a smile touched Morrison's lips. Indeed. Sebastian has made quite a claim tonight. The pack will expect proof of this union's value. With respect, Elder Morrison, Sebastian's voice carried deadly quiet, I don't require the pack's approval for my choice of mate. The temperature in the alcove seemed to drop 10 degrees. The other counselors exchanged glances loaded with meaning. Perhaps not, Morrison said carefully. But you do require their loyalty. A divided pack serves no one. The words hung in the air like a sword, beautiful and dangerous and sharp enough to sever everything Sebastian had built. Looking around the ballroom, at the hostile faces, the whispered conversations, the battle lines already being drawn, Evangeline realized the truth. This wasn't just a banquet. It was a declaration of war. Chapter 20. Sunlight filtered through the silk curtains of Sebastian's bedroom, painting golden patterns across the rumpled sheets where Evangeline lay curled against his chest. The sapphire earrings from last night glittered on the nightstand beside her, a sparkling reminder of how dramatically their world had shifted in the space of one evening. Sebastian's fingers traced lazy circles along her bare shoulder, his touch reverent and wondering, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. The powerful Alpha who had faced down the council with ice-cold authority was gone, replaced by a man vulnerable in his contentment. No regrets? His voice was rough with sleep and something deeper, a need for reassurance that made Evangeline's heart ache with tenderness. She tilted her head to meet his gaze, those ice-blue eyes now warm as a summer sky. About last night? About us? Never. Her fingers found the strong line of his jaw, tracing the faintest shadow of stubble. Though I suspect we've stirred up quite the hornet's nest. Sebastian's laugh rumbled through his chest, vibrating against her skin. Morrison looked like he'd swallowed glass when I introduced you. Victoria nearly fainted when she realized I was serious. Your ex-fiancé seemed less than thrilled, Evangeline observed dryly. Ancient history. Sebastian's arms tightened around her possessively. There was never anything real between Victoria and me, just political maneuvering disguised as courtship. His lips found the sensitive spot beneath her ear. This is real. You are real. The simple words carried the weight of a vow, and Evangeline felt something settle deep in her bones, a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. For so long, she'd defined herself by what she lacked: no pack, no family beyond Oliver, no security. But here, wrapped in Sebastian's arms in the pale morning light, she felt complete. A sharp knock interrupted the moment, followed by Oliver's voice through the door. Evie? Sebastian said we could make pancakes this morning, but I can't find the good flour anywhere. Evangeline buried her face against Sebastian's shoulder, mortified. He knows I'm in here. He's 14, not blind, Sebastian said with amusement. Besides, he approves. Told me yesterday he thinks we're perfect for each other. He did not. He did. Also called us both idiots for taking so long to figure it out. Sebastian pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Smart kid. Gets that from his sister. I should go help him with breakfast, Evangeline said, though she made no move to leave the warmth of Sebastian's embrace. In a minute. Sebastian's voice grew serious. Evangeline, about what happens next, the pack politics, the council's expectations. She silenced him with a finger against his lips. Whatever comes, we face it together. No more secrets, no more distance. Just us. Us, Sebastian repeated, as if testing the word. I like the sound of that. 20 minutes later, Evangeline found Oliver in the kitchen, standing on a chair to reach the upper cabinets with the determined focus of a surgeon. He'd already laid out eggs, vanilla, and what appeared to be half the spice rack. Good morning, chef, she said, tying an apron around her waist. Planning to feed an army? Oliver grinned at her, his face bright with happiness. Sebastian said he's never had proper pancakes, can you believe that? Rich guy, fancy estate, and he's been eating protein bars for breakfast like some kind of barbarian. I can hear you, Sebastian said from the doorway, his hair still mussed from sleep and his shirt only half buttoned. The domestic side of him, powerful Alpha reduced to rumpled boyfriend, made Evangeline's chest tight with affection. Good, Oliver said cheerfully. You need to hear about your tragic breakfast choices. He turned to Evangeline with theatrical despair. Evie, he doesn't even own maple syrup. I had to send Adrian to town this morning. Sebastian moved to the coffee maker with the single-minded focus of a man who required caffeine to function. I have a very efficient morning routine. Boring morning routine, Oliver corrected. But don't worry, we're fixing that. Right, Evie? Right. Evangeline smiled, pulling Oliver down from his chair and ruffling his dark hair. Though maybe we should discuss your new habit of ordering the household staff around. Adrian offered. Oliver protested. And he said it was nice to have someone appreciate proper breakfast ingredients. Apparently, Sebastian's idea of variety is choosing between plain oatmeal and protein powder. I'm standing right here, Sebastian pointed out mildly, though his eyes were warm with affection as he watched the siblings banter. We know, Oliver and Evangeline said in unison, then dissolved into laughter. As they worked together, Oliver measuring flour with scientific precision, Evangeline whisking batter to perfect smoothness, Sebastian contributing by staying out of the way and offering coffee refills, something magical happened. The kitchen filled with more than the scent of vanilla and butter, it filled with the warm, indefinable essence of family. So, Oliver said casually as he flipped his third pancake with expert skill, when's the wedding? Evangeline nearly dropped her whisk. Oliver. What? You're mates now, right? That's like being married in wolf terms. Oliver looked between them with innocent curiosity. Plus, Sebastian already said I could call him Dad if I wanted to. He did what? Evangeline turned to Sebastian, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. It came up yesterday during our tour of the office, Sebastian said carefully. Oliver asked about family dynamics. If things worked out between us. And you said? I said I'd be honored. Sebastian's voice grew quiet, vulnerable. If that's what both of you wanted. The honesty in his words, the careful hope, made Evangeline's eyes prick with tears. This man, this powerful, complicated, wounded man, was asking to be part of their small, fierce family. Asking to belong to them as much as they belonged to him. Well? Oliver demanded, brandishing his spatula like a weapon. Are we doing this family thing or not? Because I've got college applications to think about, and a Blackthorne has a much better ring than a Whitmore on acceptance letters. Oliver Whitmore, Evangeline said sternly, but she was fighting a smile. Oliver Blackthorne, he countered with a grin. Has a nice sound, doesn't it? Sebastian set down his coffee cup and moved to stand behind Evangeline, his hands settling on her shoulders with gentle possession. It has a perfect sound, he said quietly. Both of your names do. Looking at her brother's hopeful face, feeling Sebastian's warmth at her back, Evangeline realized they'd already made their choice. Somewhere between midnight conversations and shared storms, between quiet meals and loud laughter, they'd stopped being three separate people and become something new. They'd become a family. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. Oliver whooped and launched himself at both of them, pancake batter flying everywhere as he wrapped them in an enthusiastic hug. Sebastian laughed, actually laughed, deep and rich and joyful, and pulled them both closer. In the sun-drenched kitchen of Ravenshollow estate, surrounded by the chaos of half-made breakfast and the promise of forever, they held each other tight and chose love over fear, belonging over loneliness. They chose each other. And for the first time in any of their lives, that felt like more than enough, it felt like everything. Chapter 21. The full moon hung like a pearl against black velvet, casting silver light across the lake where everything had begun. Sebastian stood at the water's edge, his hands steady despite the thundering of his heart, the small velvet box in his pocket feeling heavier than his entire fortune. 3 months had passed since the banquet, 3 months of quiet mornings and stolen kisses, of Oliver's laughter echoing through the halls of Ravenshollow estate and Evangeline's presence transforming his house into a home. The pack had grudgingly accepted their Alpha's choice, the council had ceased their subtle protests, and even Victoria had stopped calling with thinly veiled attempts at sabotage. But tonight wasn't about politics or pack dynamics. Tonight was about the woman walking toward him through the moonlight, her white dress floating around her like captured starlight. You're being very mysterious, Evangeline said as she reached him, her voice carrying that note of amused affection that never failed to make his chest tight with love. Oliver practically vibrated with excitement when you sent him to Adrian for the evening. What are you planning? Sebastian took her hands, marveling as always at how perfectly they fit in his. Do you remember the first time we met? Of course. In your kitchen at 2 in the morning, when you caught me making. No. Sebastian's thumb traced across her knuckles. Before that. 3 years ago, right here by this lake. Evangeline's brow furrowed in confusion. Sebastian, we never. She stopped, her eyes widening as understanding began to dawn. The wolf. The black wolf I danced with under the moon. You were so beautiful, Sebastian said softly, the memory as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. This ethereal white wolf who appeared like something from a dream. I'd come here to run off my anger after another pointless council meeting about choosing a mate, and there you were, wild and free and perfect. That was you. Evangeline's voice was barely a whisper. I felt such a connection, like I'd found something I'd been searching for my whole life. But when morning came, you were gone. I searched everywhere, asked everyone, but no one knew of a white wolf matching your description. Sebastian lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. I convinced myself you were a dream, some manifestation of what I wanted but could never have. Tears glittered in Evangeline's eyes as the pieces fell into place. I thought about that night for months afterward. There was something about you, about us together, that felt like coming home. But I was nobody, packless and struggling, and you were. Yours, Sebastian finished firmly. I was yours from that moment, even if it took us 3 years to find our way back to each other. The moonlight danced across the water's surface, the same silver patterns that had witnessed their first wordless courtship. Sebastian released her hands and stepped back, reaching into his pocket with movements that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Evangeline Whitmore, he said, dropping to one knee as the velvet box opened to reveal a ring that caught the moonlight and threw it back in brilliant fragments. You saved me before I even knew I needed saving. You brought light into my darkness, laughter into my silence, love into a heart I thought was too damaged to feel. The ring was perfect, a sapphire the color of midnight surrounded by diamonds that sparkled like captured stars. Not traditional, not expected, but uniquely beautiful. Like her. You are my mate, my partner, my other half, Sebastian continued, his voice rough with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that fairy tales can come true? Sebastian. Evangeline's hands flew to cover her mouth, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. There's more, he said quickly, reaching into his other pocket to produce a second, smaller box. This isn't just about us. It's about the family we've become, the three of us together. He opened the second box to reveal a simple silver chain with a pendant, a wolf running beneath a crescent moon. Oliver's adoption papers are already filed. If you'll have me as your husband, I'd like him as my son. Legally, officially, forever. The sob that escaped Evangeline was equal parts joy and overwhelming love. You want to adopt Oliver? I want to be his father. I want to walk him down the aisle at his wedding someday, teach him to drive, embarrass him in front of his girlfriends, and love him the way he deserves to be loved. Sebastian's voice cracked slightly. I want us to be a real family, Evangeline. In every way that matters. For a moment, the only sound was the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the distant call of night birds. Then Evangeline was moving, dropping to her knees in front of him, her hands framing his face with infinite tenderness. Yes, she whispered, the word carrying all the love and hope and fierce determination that had brought them through every obstacle. Yes to the proposal, yes to the adoption, yes to forever with you. Sebastian's hands shook as he slipped the ring onto her finger, the sapphire catching the moonlight like a promise made manifest. Then they were kissing, desperate and joyful and complete, while the moon watched over them like a benevolent guardian. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing through their tears, Sebastian fastened the pendant around her neck with reverent care. For Oliver, he said softly. So he knows he's part of this too. He's going to cry, Evangeline warned, fingering the silver wolf with wonder. Happy tears, but still. You've just made every dream he's ever had come true. What about your dreams? Sebastian asked, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Evangeline looked up at him, her alpha, her mate, her beloved, and smiled with radiant happiness. "You are my dream, Sebastian Blackthorne. You and Oliver and this impossible, beautiful life we're building together." Above them, the full moon reached its zenith, bathing the lake in silver fire. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, long and mournful and achingly beautiful. Another answered, then another, until the night was filled with the ancient song of their kind. Sebastian and Evangeline stood wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by moonlight and music and the promise of forever. 3 years ago, 2 wolves had found each other in this very spot and danced to the rhythm of their hearts. Now, 2 humans had found their way back to complete the circle. The moon smiled down on them, witness to endings and beginnings, to love that transcended time and circumstance and the careful boundaries of what was supposed to be possible. In the distance, Ravenshollow estate glowed with warm light, home to a family that had been written in the stars from the very beginning. They were exactly where they belonged. Chapter 22. The scream that shattered the pre-dawn quiet of Ravenshollow estate was inhuman, a sound of pure anguish that had Sebastian bolting upright in bed, his wolf instantly alert to danger. Beside him, Evangeline was already moving, her engagement ring catching the first pale light as she reached for her robe. The sapphire that had sparkled with such promise just hours before now seemed to mock them with its brilliance. "Oliver," she breathed, the name torn from her throat like a prayer. They ran through the corridors, bare feet slapping against marble floors, following the sounds of chaos that grew louder with each step. The grand foyer was a battlefield, overturned furniture, shattered glass from the crystal chandelier, and in the center of it all, Adrian lying motionless in a pool of blood. Adrian. Evangeline dropped to her knees beside the elderly butler, her hands fluttering over his injuries with desperate efficiency. "Sebastian, he's alive, but barely. Where's Oliver?" Sebastian's voice was deadly quiet, his alpha power rolling through the estate like thunder. Every wolf within miles would feel it, the rage of a pack leader whose family had been threatened. Adrian's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and pain-glazed. "Tried to stop them," he whispered, blood speckling his lips. "The boy fought like a wolf, but there were too many." "Who?" Sebastian knelt beside them, his hands gentle despite the violence radiating from every line of his body. "Who took him, Adrian?" "Ashworth." The name was barely audible. "Theodore Ashworth. Said to tell you this was payment for stealing what belonged to him." Evangeline's anguished cry cut through Sebastian like a blade. "No. No, no, no." She tried to stand, to run, but Sebastian caught her shoulders, anchoring her before she could collapse. "We'll get him back," he said, his voice iron and promise. "I swear to you, Evangeline, we will bring Oliver home." The next hour passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Adrian was rushed to the pack's private medical facility, Sebastian's security team swept the estate for clues, and every resource of the Ravenshollow Empire was mobilized with military precision. But it was Evangeline who found the real message. "Sebastian." Her voice was hollow, dead. She stood in Oliver's workshop, holding a piece of paper that trembled in her shaking hands. "He left this on Oliver's desk." Sebastian took the note, reading Theodore's elegant script with growing fury. "My dear Evangeline, you always did underestimate me. Did you really think I would simply accept your betrayal? That I would allow a packless nobody to humiliate the Ashworth name without consequence? Your precious brother is safe, for now. He's quite comfortable in one of our family's hunting lodges, though I can't promise how long that will last. Wolves do tend to get restless in captivity. You have until sunset tomorrow to come to me. Alone. Renounce your false mate bond with Blackthorne, accept your rightful place at my side, and little Oliver can return to his coloring books and childish dreams. Refuse, and I'll make sure his death is slow enough for you to hear every scream. Choose wisely, darling. You wouldn't want his blood on your conscience. Ever yours, Theodore." The paper crumpled in Sebastian's fist, his wolf howling for violence, for the sweet satisfaction of tearing Theodore Ashworth limb from limb. But beneath the rage was something colder, sharper, the calculating fury of an alpha who would burn the world to protect what was his. He wants me to trade myself for Oliver, Evangeline said, her voice eerily calm. I have to go. Like hell. Sebastian's response was immediate, absolute. You're not going anywhere near that psychopath. He's my brother. He's our son. Sebastian's hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. And I will not lose either of you. Not to Theodore, not to anyone. Evangeline's composure finally cracked, tears streaming down her cheeks as the full horror of the situation hit her. What if we can't find him in time? What if Theodore? No. Sebastian's voice cut through her panic like a blade. Theodore made one crucial mistake. He thinks like a coward, like someone who's never had to fight for anything that truly mattered. But I've been preparing for war since I was 10 years old. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. Report, he barked into the device. Alpha, it's Kane. We've located 3 possible Ashworth properties within striking distance. Remote hunting lodges, all heavily wooded, perfect for hiding a kidnapped victim. His head of security's voice was grim but professional. But sir, they're all defended positions. This isn't going to be subtle. I don't want subtle. Sebastian's smile was all predator. I want overwhelming. Mobilize every wolf we have, call in every favor, activate every alliance. Theodore wants to play games? Let's show him what happens when you threaten a Blackthorne. As Sebastian coordinated his forces, Evangeline stood in the center of the chaos, her hand pressed to the pendant at her throat, the silver wolf that symbolized their family, their bond, their love. Oliver was out there somewhere, probably terrified, definitely in danger, and it was her fault. Her past had reached out to destroy their future. Evangeline. Sebastian's voice was gentle now, the alpha mask dropping to reveal the man beneath. Look at me. She met his eyes, seeing her own fear reflected in their ice-blue depths. We're going to get him back, Sebastian said simply. Whatever it takes, however many wolves I have to kill, whatever prices I have to pay, Oliver comes home. That's not a hope or a wish. That's a promise. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Somewhere in the growing darkness, Theodore Ashworth waited with his stolen prize, confident that fear would drive them to surrender. He was about to learn the difference between a pack that ruled through fear and a family that fought through love. Sebastian Blackthorne was coming for his son. And hell was coming with him. Chapter 23. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Thornwick reeked of rust and decay, its broken windows like dead eyes staring into the approaching dusk. Evangeline's heart hammered against her ribs as she approached the entrance, every instinct screaming at her to run. I know you're watching, she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm here. Alone, just like you demanded. Theodore emerged from the shadows, his once handsome face twisted with bitter satisfaction. Behind him, 2 hulking wolves flanked a small figure tied to a chair, Oliver, pale but defiant, his young face streaked with tears he refused to shed. Evie. Oliver's voice cracked with relief and terror. Don't, it's a trap. He's not going to let us go. Shut up, boy, Theodore snarled, backhanding Oliver across the face. The sound echoed through the warehouse like a gunshot. Don't you dare touch him. Evangeline lunged forward, but Theodore's wolves blocked her path, their growls reverberating through the cavernous space. Now, darling, Theodore crooned, circling her like a predator. You're hardly in a position to make demands. Though I must say, you look lovely tonight. That engagement ring suits you, pity you won't be wearing it much longer. You got what you wanted, Evangeline said, fighting to keep her voice level. I'm here. Let Oliver go. Theodore laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Oh, my sweet, naive Evangeline. Did you really think this was just about getting you back? This is about respect. About showing that packless nobody exactly what happens when someone dares to reject Theodore Ashworth. You rejected me, Evangeline whispered, confusion and hurt bleeding through her fear. Details, Theodore waved dismissively. The point is, you embarrassed me. You made me look weak in front of the council, fawning over that ice-cold bastard Blackthorne. And now you're going to pay for it. Please, Evangeline's voice broke. Oliver's just a child. He's sick, he needs his medication. He needs to learn his place, Theodore cut her off. Just like his sister. You both need to understand that there are consequences for defying your betters. From the corner of her eye, Evangeline caught a flash of movement in the rafters above. Her heart leaped with desperate hope, but she forced herself to keep talking, to keep Theodore's attention focused on her. You're right, she said, dropping her eyes in false submission. I was wrong to reject you. Wrong to think I deserved better than what you offered. Theodore's smile widened, triumphant and ugly. Now we're getting somewhere. On your knees, Evangeline. Show me proper respect. Like hell she will. Sebastian's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade of ice. He dropped from the rafters with predatory grace, landing between Evangeline and Theodore with his eyes blazing silver fire. Blackthorne, Theodore spat, his face twisting with rage. I told her to come alone. And I told you what would happen if you touched my family, Sebastian replied, his voice deadly calm. Did you really think I'd let her walk into your trap without backup? Your family? Theodore laughed harshly. She's a packless orphan, and that boy is a sickly burden. What could they possibly mean to the great Sebastian Blackthorne? Everything, Sebastian said simply, and the single word carried the weight of absolute truth. They mean everything. Theodore's face contorted with jealous fury. Then you can watch them die together. He lunged forward, shifting mid-leap into his brown wolf form. Sebastian met him halfway, their bodies colliding with bone-jarring force as they crashed to the concrete floor in a tangle of fangs and claws. Oliver. Evangeline scrambled toward her brother, dodging the circling wolves who seemed uncertain whether to join the fight or guard their prisoner. The ropes, Oliver gasped, his young face pale but determined. Evie, I can feel it, the change. It's coming. Evangeline's hands flew over the knots, her fingers fumbling with desperate urgency. Behind her, the sounds of battle were horrific, snarls, crashes, the wet sound of claws meeting flesh. I can't, the knots are too tight, she sobbed, her nails breaking as she clawed at the bonds. Step back, Evie, Oliver said, his voice strange and distant. I can feel the moon. I can feel the wolf. Oliver, you're too young. I'm not too young to protect my family. The change that swept over Oliver was unlike anything Evangeline had ever seen. One moment he was a frightened 13-year-old boy, the next he was a silver wolf the size of a mastiff, his ropes falling away like paper. Impossible, one of Theodore's wolves breathed, shifting back to human form in shock. He's just a pup. Oliver's howl cut through the warehouse, young but fierce, calling his pack to battle. And then he was moving, launching himself at the nearest threat with instincts as old as time itself. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Sebastian and Theodore rolled across the floor, both in wolf form now, their battle brutal and desperate. Theodore's remaining wolves moved to flank Sebastian, but Oliver intercepted one while Evangeline grabbed a broken piece of rebar, standing guard over her transformed brother with fierce determination. You want to hurt my family? She shouted at the advancing wolf. You'll have to go through me first. The wolf lunged, and Evangeline swung the makeshift weapon with all her strength. The impact sent shockwaves up her arms, but the wolf fell back, dazed. Across the warehouse, Sebastian had Theodore pinned, his massive black wolf form dwarfing the smaller brown wolf. But Theodore was desperate now, fighting with the fury of the cornered and defeated. Yield, Sebastian's voice came from his wolf throat, barely recognizable but unmistakably commanding. Theodore's answer was to snap at Sebastian's throat, catching him off guard and breaking free. He turned toward Evangeline and Oliver, his eyes wild with murderous intent. If I can't have you, he snarled, no one can. He charged toward them, but Oliver was ready. The young wolf met Theodore's attack head-on, his smaller size allowing him to dart beneath the larger wolf's defenses. His teeth found Theodore's throat, and suddenly the warehouse fell silent except for the sound of Theodore's final, gurgling breath. Chapter 24, Destiny. The Ravenshollow council chamber had never felt so charged with tension and triumph. Ancient mahogany panels gleamed under the crystal chandeliers as the most powerful wolves in the territory gathered to bear witness to justice, and to a new beginning. "The evidence is clear," Elder Morrison announced, his weathered hands gripping the podium. "Theodore Ashworth's crimes against this pack, against an innocent child, demand the harshest judgment." Sebastian sat in the front row, his arm protectively around Evangeline's shoulders. Oliver, still pale from his ordeal but radiating a new confidence, pressed close to his sister's other side. "He's really gone," Oliver whispered, his young voice carrying a mixture of relief and residual fear. "He can never hurt us again," Evangeline murmured, pressing a kiss to his temple. "We're safe now, little wolf." Elder Morrison's voice carried across the chamber. Furthermore, the council recognizes the extraordinary circumstances of young Oliver Whitmore's first transformation. To shift at 13, in defense of family, shows a strength of spirit and wolf that honors our oldest traditions. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembled wolves. Sebastian squeezed Evangeline's hand, his eyes bright with pride. "By the authority vested in this council," Elder Morrison continued, "and with the unanimous consent of Alpha Sebastian Blackthorne, we hereby recognize Oliver Whitmore as the acknowledged heir to the Ravenshollow pack, with all rights and protections therein." Oliver's gasp was audible. "Me? But I'm not, I'm just." "You're my son," Sebastian said quietly, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent chamber. "In all the ways that matter, you're my son. And this pack will be yours someday, if you want it." Tears spilled down Evangeline's cheeks as Oliver threw his arms around Sebastian's neck. "I do want it," he whispered fiercely. "I want to be part of your pack. Part of your family." "Then it's settled," Elder Morrison smiled, the stern lines of his face softening. "And now, I believe we have a wedding to attend." The full moon hung like a silver coin in the velvet sky, casting ethereal light across the ancient stone circle deep in Ravenshollow territory. Hundreds of candles flickered in the gentle breeze, their flames dancing across the faces of gathered pack members who had come to witness their alpha's mating ceremony. Evangeline stood at the edge of the circle, her heart racing as she took in the scene. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace, flowing around her like moonbeams. The sapphire engagement ring caught the candlelight, but it was the simple silver pendant at her throat, Sebastian's first gift to her, that made her feel truly beautiful. "You look like a queen," Oliver said beside her, handsome in his formal suit, his new confidence evident in every line of his young body. "I feel like I'm dreaming," Evangeline admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "If you are, then we all are," Sebastian's deep voice came from behind them. She turned, and her breath caught. He stood magnificent in the moonlight, wearing the ceremonial black robes of an alpha, silver threading gleaming at the collar and cuffs. But it was his eyes that held her, those ice-blue depths now warm with love and promise. "Are you ready, my love?" he asked, offering her his arm. "I've been ready since that night in the forest," she whispered, taking his arm and feeling the rightness of it settle into her bones. Together, they walked into the sacred circle. Elder Morrison waited at the center, his ceremonial robes rustling in the night breeze. The pack formed a living circle around them, their eyes reflecting the moonlight like stars. "Under the witness of the moon and the blessing of our ancestors," Elder Morrison began, his voice carrying ancient authority, "we gather to unite two souls, two wolves, two hearts that have found their destined match." Sebastian turned to face Evangeline, taking her hands in his. "I, Sebastian Blackthorne, Alpha of Ravenshollow pack, claim you as my mate, my Luna, my heart's completion. I promise to protect you, cherish you, and love you through all the phases of the moon, for all the days of my life." Evangeline's voice was steady despite her tears. "I, Evangeline Whitmore, accept your claim and make my own. I promise to stand beside you, to be your strength when you falter, your joy when darkness falls, your mate through all seasons of our lives." "The rings," Elder Morrison requested. Oliver stepped forward, his young face solemn with the importance of his role. He carried the rings on a silver cushion, matching bands of white gold inscribed with ancient wolf runes. These rings represent the eternal cycle, Elder Morrison intoned as Sebastian slipped the band onto Evangeline's finger. No beginning, no end, only love that continues through all transformations. As Evangeline placed Sebastian's ring on his finger, she felt something shift deep in her soul, a connection snapping into place, bright and unbreakable. The bond is acknowledged, Elder Morrison declared. What the moon has blessed, let no force on earth divide. The pack's howl rose into the night, a symphony of voices celebrating their alpha's happiness. Sebastian pulled Evangeline into his arms, his kiss sealing their union under the eternal witness of the moon. I love you, he whispered against her lips. Forever, she whispered back. Oliver's delighted laugh broke through their private moment. Does this mean I can call you Dad now? Sebastian lifted the boy easily, including him in their embrace. You already are my son. Both of you, you're my family, my pack, my everything. As the three of them stood together in the moonlight, surrounded by their pack family and blessed by destiny itself, Evangeline knew that all the pain, all the struggles, all the lonely nights had led to this perfect moment. She was no longer the rejected, packless orphan. She was Luna of Ravenshollow, beloved mate of Sebastian Blackthorne, and mother to the future heir of one of the most powerful packs in the territory. But most importantly, she was exactly where she belonged, home, at last, with the family she was always meant to have. Thank you for listening to this story. Subscribe, like and share for more exciting stories. Also, as we always do not forget to leave your wonderful opinion about this story. Thank you.